Chapter 112. He recalled the song, Ambush from 10 Sides, from his previous life. It seemed to be about the war between Chu and Han. The king of Chu, Xiangyu, was besieged by the king of Han, Liu Bang, and was surrounded by enemies from all directions. The last of the heroes, the hegemon king of western Chu, Xiangyu, ended up committing suicide at the Wu River. He thought to himself, I'm probably not mistaken. Yu Qianzhou stared at the figure on the stage and said slowly, overflowing with murderous intent, surrounded by enemies from all directions, ambush from 10 sides, no way to live, no way to retreat, and the song ends with death. As soon as he said that, there was a sudden clap on the stage. The pipa in the pipa girl's hand fell onto the stage. The generals on both sides could not help but sway, their expressions changing unpredictably. Ghost General's hand that was playing with the wine glass also paused. When the disciples from the various sects saw that Yu Qianzhou's words had caused such a huge reaction, they did not know what would happen to them, so they held their breaths and watched anxiously. Yu Qianzhou, on the other hand, smiled inwardly. He reckoned that the person on the stage was as unlucky as Xiangyu. His guess was right. This song was written by Ghost General when he was surrounded in the last battle before his death. In the end, after the maidservant played the song once, the enemy launched a large-scale attack, and all the generals present were the souls of the dead. Just like that, Yu Qianzhou's words evoked the tragic memories of their defeat. How could they not be moved? Ghost General walked up to the maidservant, bent down to pick up the pipa, and returned it to her with a sigh. The maidservant held the pipa, looked at him gently, and shook her head. Yu Qianzhou saw the two of them exchanging flirtatious glances. The latter thought to himself, what a bullsh *t maidservant, I think she's more like a concubine. He then looked at the maid beside the general's seat. Only then did she look like a maid. The red-armored Ghost General took a few steps back and glanced at the absent-minded people. He frowned slightly and stared at Yu Qianzhou, shouting in a deep voice, I don't care if you're really talented or not. But you've spoken rudely and disturbed the morale of my troops. You'll be beheaded according to the military law. It seemed that Yu Qianzhou's words really touched his sore spot. The disciples of the various sects started to panic. After killing Yu Qianzhou, they would be next. F***ck me. Behead your mother. You've long since become a ghost. Military law my ass. Yu Qianzhou was stunned for a moment, then he sneered and said, the great general is in control of the military, killing me is naturally not a problem. But does the great general still remember? You're the one who wants me to judge the song. After that, he criticized me for disturbing the morale of the army. Could it be that the great general was a fickle villain? The great general is famous in the demon domain. I didn't expect. He shook his head and said, you've really disappointed me. After that, he thought to himself, it seems like I have to get ready to leave. His rebuke made the disciples of the various sects even more flustered. On the other hand, the generals on both sides, including the hot-tempered one, all stared at the Ghost King on the stage. Ghost General swept his gaze to both sides and snorted coldly. He said, what a glib tongue. You're Yu Qianzhou, right? Yu Qianzhou, I want to see if you can Yu Qianzhou. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. If you can restore the morale of my troops and restore the morale of my troops, I'll let you go. Everyone could see that Ghost General's words were undoubtedly making things difficult for him. Instantly, all eyes fell on Yu Qianzhou. F***ck. Yu Qianzhou's gaze paused on the maidservant holding the pipa on the stage and the zither on the shelf behind her. He smiled and said, how would I dare to disobey the order of the great general? However, I have a small request. I wonder if the great general can agree to it. Ghost General snorted coldly. Speak. I want to borrow something from the great general's roll-calling platform, Yu Qianzhou said bluntly. I don't care if you're Ghost General or not. Anyway, I'm not afraid of you. Everyone didn't know what he wanted to do and looked curiously at the roll-calling platform. Even the Ghost King turned around and glanced behind him. He didn't find anything special and couldn't help but sneer. You have to use everything on the platform. However, if you don't meet my requirements after using it, don't blame me for punishing you according to military law. Actually, he was a little curious about Yu Qianqiu. Seeing that the Ghost King agreed, Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything and climbed up the side of the roll-calling platform indifferently. Standing on the platform, he looked around. It felt good to have thousands of soldiers and horses right under his nose. Everyone's gaze followed him. Yu Qianqiu paused on the platform. He looked at the long table filled with fruits and wine and said to the maidservant in front of the great general's throne, "Clean up everything on this long table." The maidservant was startled and looked at the Ghost King. The latter's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. He frowned and said, "Do as he says." The maidservant immediately obeyed and quickly cleaned up the long table. Then, she stood to the side. Everyone's appetite was really whetted. Yu Qianqiu nodded in satisfaction. He then walked over to the maidservant holding the pipa and stood in front of her. He smiled and looked at her. She was indeed a beauty that could cause the downfall of nations. No wonder she was always by the great general's side. The maidservant was also looking at Yu Qianqiu curiously. She had never seen such a bold person. Ah! The disciples from the various sects were shocked. Yu Qianqiu looked like he was flirting with an innocent woman. No, he was flirting with the Ghost General's maidservant in public. He was too bold. Did this brat not want to live anymore? The generals on both sides of the platform looked at each other. They had followed the Ghost General from birth to death. Naturally, they knew the identity of this woman. The Ghost General's expression darkened. Yu Qianqiu suddenly shook his head and sighed. Only the great general's elegance is worthy of your peerless beauty. Having been seen through by him, the maid smiled sweetly and bowed slightly, implicitly expressing her gratitude for his compliment. This flattery that was neither light nor heavy actually made the Ghost General feel comfortable. His brows unconsciously twitched, and his sunken expression returned to normal. He continued to watch patiently. Yu Qianqiu walked to the shelf behind her and took down a zither. He waved his finger on the strings to make a harmonic note. He tested the tone and found it to be not bad. He then walked to her side and asked, "Do you know how to play the zither?" The maidservant looked at the Ghost General and smiled at him. She turned back and said, "I know a thing or two." Yu Qianqiu hugged the zither and smiled. "Just now, the great general allowed me to listen to your song on the pipa. In the end, my evaluation angered the great general. Now that I have come across a piece of music, I have specially come to repay Mississippi. I respectfully ask Miss to listen. I hope that Mrs. Evaluation will be able to appease the great general's anger. I will be eternally grateful. Flattery must be done on the blade. Since the Ghost King had the same character as Xiangyu, this girl must be similar to Yu Ji. Pillow talk must be very powerful." Yu Qianqiu thought so. Although Yu Qianqiu spoke politely, the maidservant did not see any fear in him. The maidservant glanced at the Ghost General and said with a smile, "I can listen to the song, but I have never asked about the great general's military affairs." These words were smart. She was a smart woman. No wonder the Ghost King liked her. Yu Qianqiu smiled. He walked to the long table and put down the zither. He then sat down and made a "please sit opposite me" gesture to the maidservant. The maidservant smiled sweetly. She did not care about the disgrace of sitting on the ground. She placed the pipa on the shelf behind her and took down a praying mat. She walked over gracefully. The maidservant beside the great general hurried over and took the praying mat from the maidservant. She placed it opposite Yu Qianqiu. The Pipa maidservant also sat opposite him seductively. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the ghost general and saw that he was looking at the Pipa maidservant with infinite love. He thought to himself that this woman was his Achilles' heel. The generals below the stage were dumbfounded. The disciples of the various sects were also dumbfounded. The female disciples looked at Yu Qianqiu with admiration. Gu Qingyun's chest rose and fell rapidly. He was thrilled. What a hero! I am ashamed. I, Gu Qingyun, am not even 1/10,000th as good. Chapter 113. At the peak of the mountain, the elders of the 6 major sects were relieved to see the dark clouds calming down. Suddenly, an elder shouted, "Look, it's moving." The elders gathered together and saw that the light dots on the 6 divine sense compasses, other than the scattered ones, had all gathered together and seemed to be moving in the same direction. The elders watched calmly, but after a while, the dot of light stopped moving again. What's going on? The elders found it strange. They were also people who had trained in the devil domain, so they knew that the scattered light spots were probably those experienced people who had already laid an ambush. But what was going on with so many people gathered together? They had never seen it before. Could it be that they were all captured by the ghost general? Qiu Weiyuan asked doubtfully. Everyone was silent. They all had this guess, and their hearts were heavy. Logically speaking, when this kind of situation occurred, they, the elders, should have taken action to help. But could they save them from the hands of the ghost general? Not only did he have the cultivation of the Ghost King, but he also had many Ghost King cultivators under him. If they, who were at the crossing calamity stage, went to the Ghost General, they might not be able to return. Hey! An elder of Supporting Immortals Island pointed to a moving light spot on the spiritual compass in front of him, and everyone gathered to look. Elder Quan and Elder Sun glanced at each other. They were very familiar with this light spot of divine sense. It was Yu Qianqiu's. Even Yu Qianqiu didn't move, so why did this kid move alone? Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and prepared for a while. When he opened his eyes, he smiled at the beauty in front of him. His fingers flew on the strings, and the prelude was like floating clouds and flowing water. It was a tune that no one had heard before. The maid's eyes lit up, and she listened attentively. Since the ghost general could play the pipa, he naturally knew about this. He looked at Yu Qianqiu with a trace of surprise. The 3 female disciples of Wanfen Garden who knew Yu Qianqiu didn't know that he could play the pipa. They only knew that he had a good relationship with the elder in charge and often came to Wanfen Garden to eat and drink. Everyone gradually became immersed in the sound of the zither. Yu Qianqiu suddenly started singing. His voice was not perfect, and his singing was a little hoarse, but it had a leisurely charm. Endless extravagant love in the world of mortals, endless grievances in the world of mortals, generations are all faded, the same blood flows, the same water drinks, this road is long and long. Of course the red flowers would accompany the green leaves, but who would accompany them for the rest of their lives? Faintly coming and going, the scenes of the past reappear in my mind. Although the lotus root is broken, the thread is still connected. I sigh at the many changes in the world. A red flower must be matched with green leaves. Who would accompany her in this life? The ghost general and the maid were moved. The 2 of them couldn't restrain their emotions. Their eyes were filled with tenderness. The female disciples below the stage were in a trance. Their eyes shone with a hint of amorous desire. As for the generals and male disciples, they only felt that the song was pleasant to listen to, and the lyrics were filled with the vicissitudes of life. They were all deeply immersed in it. Suddenly, the sound of the zither became more impassioned. Yu Qianqiu stared at the ghost general and sang, "Love the country, love the beauty more." Which hero would rather be alone? A good man is full of courage. His name is known far and wide. How many autumns do we have in life? I won't stop until I'm drunk. My beauty in the east. The yellow river flows in the west. Come, give me a drink. I won't stop until I'm drunk. Don't put your worries and troubles in your heart. When the second half of the song was sung, the ghost general's eyes moved away from the maid and stared at the Yuqiancho. The muscles on his face kept twitching, and he seemed to be very excited. The men below the stage were all infected by the lyrics of the song. The chests of all the generals were heaving up and down, and their eyes were red. They must have been soldiers who had fought in the east and the west, so they could better understand the phrase, "Good men are full of courage, and have lofty aspirations, and are famous throughout the world." The generals clenched their teeth, and their bodies trembled. Although they had died long ago, this feeling could be remembered. They did not give up their bodies in vain. They died in battle, and their souls did not return. If you don't believe me, today, I have a song to prove it. A good man is full of courage. His name is known far and wide. Yuqiancho played and sang again and again. In the end, he was influenced by the crowd and unknowingly activated his true vitality. The sound of the zither became louder, and the song became stronger. After a few times, his fingers played a homophonic tune. When the song ended, the echo lingered for a long time. It was not until Yuqiancho sat for a while and stood up that the crowd realized that the song had ended. A general below the stage suddenly punched his chest and raised his fist, shouting, "Great General!" In an instant, the crowd was affected. Other than the disciples of the various sects, everyone raised their fists and shouted, "Great General! Great General!" Their emotions were boiling, and their voices shook the field. Killing intent spread from the crowd and gathered in the air. The disciples of the various sects were dumbfounded. Ghost General faced the crowd and tried his best to calm his chest. He raised his palms and pressed down forcefully. Only then did the soldiers stop. He turned around again and looked at Yuqiancho. He gritted his teeth and said, "Great General, you flatter me. I wonder how the morale has been restored to the Great General." Yuqiancho cupped his fists and smiled. "Is the Great General satisfied?" "Ha!" Ghost General laughed into the sky. He suddenly waved his hand and said, "Such a great song. Does it have a name?" Yuqiancho decided to flatter him to the end. He smiled and said, "This song was composed on the spot. I haven't given it a name yet. Since the Great General wants it, I will give it to the Great General." As he said that, he looked around and his gaze fell on a huge flagpole below the stage. He made a hand seal and 3 cold rays shot out. After a series of dazzling carvings on the flagpole, he retracted his fingers and clenched his fists. The 3 cold rays quickly returned to their positions. The crowd followed Ghost General's gaze and saw a few big words appear on the flagpole. Ghost General repeated, "Love the country more than the beauty, love the country more than the beauty." He then laughed and said, "Love the country more than the beauty, Mr. Yu is a great talent." Yuqiancho was just about to say a few polite words when he saw Mr. Yu make a gesture toward the people below. Suddenly all the officers and soldiers below shouted, "Mr. Yu is really a great talent. Mr. Yu is a great talent." After shouting twice, Ghost General waved his hand to stop them. "Cough, cough." Yuqiancho clenched his fists and pretended to cough. His face actually turned red, which was rare. Ghost General pulled the maidservant beside him and held her hand. He said gently, "Of course the red flowers are matched with the green leaves. Who will accompany me for the rest of my life? My beauty in the east and the west." Ah! He suddenly turned his head and asked, "Mr. Yu, the song says that the Yellow River flows in the west. Where is the Yellow River? I have traveled all over the world. Why haven't I heard of it? Please enlighten me." Cough, cough. Yuqiancho coughed again. "Damn it. I forgot to sing and change the lyrics. Why did I bring the Yellow River from my previous life here? Where am I supposed to find the Yellow River now? So this was how the idiom, speak without thinking, came about. Damn it. However, this kind of question was not difficult for him. Naturally, he could give an answer that could fool him. Yu Qianzhou's expression suddenly became serious. He said, although the world is bright, the ways of the world are deteriorating and people's hearts are not what they used to be. I don't know which river can be described as clear. Since I feel that it is muddy, how about I call it the Yellow River? Chapter 114. When Ghost General heard this, his face was full of surprise. The maid beside him bowed and said, I didn't expect Mr. Yu to not only be a talented cultivator, but also a person who cares for the common people. Yu Ji admires you. Madam, please don't be like this. Yu Qianzhou doesn't deserve such praise. Yu Qianzhou returned the gesture very modestly. Suddenly, his expression changed and he asked, Madam, what did you say your name was? The maid looked at Ghost General and said with a smile, I am Yu Ji. Has Mr. heard of my name before? Yu Qianzhou's face twitched. He looked at Ghost General and said, could it be that the general is called Xiang Yu? Xiang Yu. Ghost General was startled and said, who is Xiang Yu? I have never changed my name or surname. I am Meng Yan. Yu Qianzhou heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly bowed and apologized, I was babbling nonsense. General and Madam, please don't take it to heart. But in his heart, he muttered, I must set a rule for my descendants to not marry a woman named Yu Ji. In my past life, there was a Xiang Yu who died young. In this life, there is a Meng Yan. It seems that women named Yu Ji are fated to bring bad luck to their husbands. Mr. Yu, you don't have to be so polite. I think you misremembered my name. Ghost General, who was a head taller than Yu Qianzhou, reached out his hand to support him. He glanced at the long table where the fruit platters were removed and said, Mister, would you like to accompany me to the main tent for a drink? Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, I dare not. Ghost General laughed and led Yu Ji down from the stage. They walked towards a large tent not far away. Yu Qianzhou nodded in the direction of the various sect's disciples, signaling them not to worry. Then, he followed the two of them. The disciples of the various sects were now prostrating themselves in admiration towards him. In just a short while, after messing around, they had become Ghost General's honored guests. Their lives should be safe now. Many people suddenly remembered what they had said to Yu Qianzhou before. As long as they could leave the demon domain alive, they would give themselves to him. However, they only thought about it and did not take it to heart. Everyone knew that it was just a joke. They believed that Yu Qianzhou would not take it to heart. Everyone naturally thought so. Wine and food were all available in the tent. The host and guests sat in turn and toasted each other. After a few glasses of wine, Ghost General Meng Yan suddenly asked, which sect does Mr. Yu cultivate in? Yu Qianzhou replied, Fuxian Island. As soon as he said this, he noticed that Meng Yan's expression was a little ugly. The atmosphere in the tent suddenly became a little strange. Yu Ji, who was beside him, pulled him and called out softly, General. Meng Yan drank by himself and looked straight ahead. In the outside world, the people with the surname Li are still ruling. Yu Ji, who was beside him, smiled apologetically at Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou smiled and nodded, indicating that it was okay. However, his mind turned a few times and he already had some speculations in his heart. He said indifferently, the imperial family of the Hua Xia Empire is indeed surnamed Li. I just don't know if it is the family with the surname Li that General mentioned. Meng Yan snorted and said, it seems that Fuxian Island is the top of the cultivation world now. As long as Fuxian Island doesn't collapse, it will be very difficult for the country of China to change its surname. As a disciple of Fuxian Island, how can you not know? In this era, no matter how strong a country's military strength was, it was impossible for them to compete with the cultivation world. They were not on the same level. It was impossible for a royal family to sit on the throne steadily without a strong cultivation sect as a backer. Yu Qianzhou already knew this, but he didn't expect that the backing of the Chinese imperial family was actually Fuxian Island. From what Meng Yan said, he could tell that this was something that he had never thought of. However, it made sense. In the cultivation world, other than Fuxian Island, which sect had the strength to support the family with the surname Li for thousands of years? It seemed that the rise of the family with the surname Li was around the same time as the rise of Fuxian Island. It was something that happened thousands of years ago. Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly and said, "I'm just a foundation establishment disciple of Fuxian Island. General might be right, but I really don't know." "You're still at the foundation establishment realm?" Meng Yan and Yu Ji were stunned at the same time and looked at each other. The two of them had already observed Yu Qianzhou and discovered that they couldn't see through his cultivation. In addition, he didn't seem to be afraid of anything and didn't care about anything. This gave the two of them an unfathomable feeling. After all, he looked too young. Yu Qianzhou shook his head. It was hard to prove this. He suddenly smiled meaningfully and said, "I'm also a disciple of Ong Guangzang." "Oh." The couple looked at each other again. Meng Yan smiled with great interest and said, "What kind of sect is Ong Guangzang? I've never heard of it. Since when can a person join two sects at the same time in the cultivation world? It was a taboo in the cultivation world in the past." Yu Qianzhou raised his wine glass and took a sip. He said indifferently, "Fuxian Island is ranked first among the righteous sects in the cultivation world, and Ong Guangzang is ranked sixth. As for joining two sects at the same time, it's also a taboo nowadays. Since it's a taboo, why did you tell me? Aren't you afraid that it'll be spread out?" Meng Yan looked indifferent, but he subconsciously straightened his body. Yu Qianzhou smiled and said indifferently, "Because I want to ask General for a small favor, so I treat you with sincerity." "Small favor?" Meng Yan looked at Yu Ji. The latter saw that they were talking about such a topic, so she raised her wine glass to her mouth and sipped it. She pretended that she didn't see anything, as if she wasn't interested in expressing her opinion on such a matter. Meng Yan snorted and said, "I'm not related to you, so why should I help you? Because I think, if the Xia Empire were to be ruled by a different surname, General, I'm sure you'd be very happy to see it." Yu Qianzhou plucked a grape from the table and easily popped it into his mouth. "What a joke. If I wanted to be ruled by someone else, I don't need you to remind me. My hundreds of thousands of troops can change the face of the Xia Empire at any time. Even if your Fuxian Island and Ong Guangzang join forces, you won't be able to stop them." Meng Yan said disdainfully. "Is that so?" Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, "I'm afraid it's not that General doesn't want to do it, but there's a reason you can't do it. For example, the hundreds of thousands of troops can't even leave the monster region, or there's some other reason." "I don't know about that." "Arrogant." Meng Yan was like a lion that was hit in its sore spot. He stood up abruptly and looked like he was going to make a move. Yu Ji, who was at the side, pretended not to see anything and continued to sip the wine in her cup. "Why? You want to make a move? Since I dared to come, I'm not afraid of you." Yu Qianzhou let out a cold snort. Instantly, a peerless beauty in a white dress appeared beside him. Her peerless face was as cold as ice as she slowly turned her head and stared at Meng Yan and Yu Ji. Teleportation. The two of them were shocked. When did the other party bring someone in? They didn't even know. Moreover, it was such a beautiful woman. She was so beautiful that even Yu Ji felt she couldn't compare. Suddenly, a powerful aura appeared from the other party's body and pressed towards the two of them. Meng Yan took a step forward and blocked in front of Yuji. A black and red baleful aura instantly came out of his body and blocked the aura. However, he was still forced to take a step back. Chapter 115. Sister, don't do it. Yu Qianqiu tried to persuade her casually. Bai Suzhen rolled up her sleeves and waved her hand to withdraw her threatening aura. She stood there quietly and watched coldly, as if the soul-stirring scene just now had nothing to do with her. Meng Yan's evil qi was gone, and his aura soared instantly. He took a step forward, and his bones crackled. He laughed wickedly and said, "When did the demon clan have a demon at the final stage of the nature's test?" Very good. The 10 great demon kings and the ghost king have made an agreement that the demon dominates the yang and the ghost dominates the yin in their respective territories. Now that the demon clan has broken the rules, don't blame me for being impolite. Humph. You are a frog at the bottom of a well. Do you think that only the demon clan has a demon at the final stage of the nature's test? Yu Qianqiu sneered and turned back to Bai Suzhen with a smile. Sister, why are you here? Where are Yunchang and the others? Bai Suzhen understood what he meant. Before Yu Qianqiu summoned her, he had secretly contacted her with his divine sense. He wanted her to give the ghost general a show of strength after she came out. Therefore, when she came out just now, she used all her cultivation to force the ghost king to take a step back with her aura. As soon as the frosty face turned around, it instantly turned into a touch of gentleness. He cooperated with her and said with a trace of anger, "Am I not as good as them in your eyes?" This was a good answer. It not only protected her bad habit of lying, but also cooperated with her brother. Anyone with a little brain would figure out what kind of people Yunchang and the others were. In Yu Qianqiu's mind, they were actually better than Bai Suzhen, who was at the final stage of the nature's test. Yu Qianqiu smiled sheepishly. Big sister must be joking. Yunchang and the others dare not say that they are better than big sister. They are just afraid of troubling big sister. Sure enough, the husband and wife were secretly surprised by their conversation. However, the ghost general had suffered a loss, so he couldn't let go of his pride so easily. He immediately said in a deep voice, "I used to roam the world, but today I've become a frog at the bottom of a well. However, since you're here, I can't help but want to learn from you." For a moment, his eyes actually emitted a red glow of excitement, showing that the fighting spirit in his heart had been ignited. He had missed out on the soldier's thirst for battle. Yu Qianqiu groaned inwardly. Could it be that he had misjudged Yuji? If they fought, they would really be exposed. Although the evil Taoist was the strongest among those of the same cultivation level, it would alert the Ghost King's subordinates outside. His Yunchang and the others would be useless now. Besides, Yuji was not someone to be trifled with. It seemed that he had to be prepared to leave. Sigh. All his efforts were in vain. Bai Suzhen slowly turned her head. Her face was still as calm as before. A faintly discernible white aura spread out, forcing Yu Qianqiu to take a few steps back. At this moment, he suddenly heard Yuji shout, "General, stop." Yu Qianqiu immediately heaved a sigh of relief. She was indeed a woman who was unwilling to be left alone. From the attitude that Meng Yan unintentionally revealed to her, it could be seen that Meng Yan's defeat in his lifetime was more or less related to this woman. A general who would not let go of a woman on the battlefield, and a woman who could always influence his decisions, no matter how powerful the general was, it would be difficult for him to always win. However, she was just right for him to use. "You're a guest. How can a general treat a guest like this?" Yuji stood up and held Meng Yan's arm. The latter's murderous aura immediately fell into a gentle embrace and disappeared without a trace. This woman had grasped the essence of playing the hero and the villain. Yu Qianqiu smiled knowingly. He also walked to Bai Suzhen's side and held her hand gently. Looking at her familiar face, which had risked her life for him and was envied by the world, he could not say anything more. He said softly, "Sister, please go back." The white gas disappeared and became gentle again. Everything was said without words. Bai Suzhen nodded slightly and disappeared without a trace. Yu Qianqiu took a breath and turned around. Meng Yan and Yu Ji were shocked again. They looked at each other. If it was said that they did not notice Bai Suzhen's sudden appearance at the beginning, it would be understandable if the two of them were careless. Now that the two of them were paying attention to her, even if it was teleportation, they should be able to roughly estimate where she was going, but Meng Yan suddenly felt that he was a little too reckless just now. This woman's cultivation base at the end of the tribulation was much stronger than his. If he were to make a move, he might really be killed in an instant. He couldn't help but look at Yu Ji again, rejoicing that her words were timely. Of course, the two of them did not know that there was such a thing as a golden bead in the world. "Mr. Yu, is this lady really your sister? I think they look like a couple." Yu Ji covered her mouth and giggled, as if nothing had happened just now. This woman really knew how to liven up the atmosphere. With her appearance in mind, she would be an outstanding social butterfly in his previous life. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and smiled faintly, without explaining. So what if he called his sister a couple? He called her master and aunt, but in the end, didn't he still become her husband? "I'm far worse than that one-armed hero. Hero Jean is a generation apart. This is the gap." Meng Yan was an ambitious and ruthless man, but he wasn't someone who couldn't let go. Moreover, his woman had pretty much resolved the awkward atmosphere, so he bluntly said, "Mr. Yu's sister's cultivation is higher than mine, but I wonder who she is? I'm afraid that not many people will know." Yu Qianqiu leisurely said, "She comes from a place called Utopia. Unfortunately, they are a group of people who don't like to get involved in the mortal world, otherwise." He shook his head and said, "If there's a chance, I would like to take you and your wife there." "Oh, I'm looking forward to it." Yu Ji giggled. "It's a piece of cake." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Since we've already said it, I, Yu Qianqiu, will not hide it anymore. Let's start with a villain first, then a gentleman. As I said, please help me with a small matter." "Say it. As long as it's something that I can help with, just say the word." Ghost General also waved his hand generously. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "This is a piece of cake for you, General." "Wait." Yu Ji suddenly stopped him and said to Meng Yan with a smile, "Since Mr. Yu said to start with a villain first, then a gentleman, I'm not a gentleman, I'm a woman. Can General let me be a villain again?" Meng Yan frowned in confusion and looked at Yu Qianqiu with an apologetic smile. He turned back and said, "Madam, please speak. I also want to ask Mr. Yu for a favor." Yu Ji smiled brightly. This woman is really hard to deal with. Yu Qianqiu was startled and nodded, "What is it?" "Madam, please speak. As long as it's within my means, I won't hesitate." Yu Ji smiled, "It's something that Mr. has promised." Yu Qianqiu suddenly realized, is it about changing surnames and ruling the world? Does Madam have someone in mind? Why don't you tell me? He thought to himself that it's a pity. In his mind, the pillar of General Shi family is the best candidate for his plan. They have a large business, high influence and military power, saving him a lot of effort. It seems like his plan will be ruined by this bitch. Unexpectedly, Yu Ji shook her head and said, "No. I believe Mr. has already guessed that my general has a grudge against the Li family. However, the winner is king and the loser is a bandit. No one can say anything and can only say that this is our fate. No matter how unstable the general's heart is, it's already been thousands of years. At least to me, it's already been forgotten. The small favor I want Mr. to help me with is another matter. Does Mr. still keep his promise to bring us to Utopia?" Yu Qianzhou was stunned and said, "That's it." He had to admit that this was indeed a small favor for him. It was too easy, and he could do it now. Furthermore, as long as he was willing, he could guarantee that the two of them could stay in Utopia for the rest of their lives. That's it. Yuji nodded with a smile. Yu Qianzhou glanced at Meng Yan and realized that he was actually unable to control his excitement. His chest was heaving up and down rapidly. Damn it. This woman's words aren't that simple. I wonder what she's up to. After thinking about it, he really couldn't think of anything wrong. He could only nod and say, "I'll agree." Yuji glanced at Meng Yan and turned around to walk over. She chuckled and said, "Mister, don't agree too quickly. I'm afraid there's something you don't know yet. It won't be too late to agree after I finish speaking. Otherwise, Mister will definitely blame Yuji later. I won't be able to face that." Chapter 116. Damn it. This is a real plot. I can't avoid it. Yu Qianzhou really wanted to sell her to Africa to be a chicken. It was not a good feeling for a man to be dug a pit by a woman and asked to jump into it. Moreover, it was a female ghost. It was hard for him not to jump into it. Yu Qianzhou said with a smile, "Madam, tell me." Yuji bowed to Meng Yan, who nodded. Yu Qianzhou was confused. Yuji showed a rare solemn expression and asked, "How much do you know about the demon ghost region?" Yu Qianzhou paused and said, "I don't know much. I've only heard about it from others. This is the first time I've heard about the great general. It seems like others don't know much about this place either. It's really difficult for ordinary people to go deep into the demon ghost region. It's normal that they don't know much about it." Yuji nodded and said slowly, "The demon ghost region has a radius of tens of millions of miles, which is much larger than the Xia Empire. My general's sphere of influence is only a few thousand miles, and he is ruling it with a demon king. Demons are in charge of Yang, and ghosts are in charge of Yin. Compared to the entire demon ghost territory, which has a radius of tens of millions of miles, the territory of the general is only 1/10,000th of it. The same goes for the other demon kings and ghost kings. In this way, the territories of the 10 demon kings and ghost kings combined are only tens of thousands of miles. The demon ghost region has such a large area." Yu Qianzhou was surprised and couldn't help asking, "Does the rest of the land have a master?" Meng Yan walked down from his seat and waved his hand. "How can there be no master in such a great land? It's just that it's divided by a group of heroes. It's not as famous and powerful as the 10 ghost kings. If they unite, their strength is much greater than the 10 ghost kings. But once they are separated, they can't compare to any of us." Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, "In that case, why don't you lead your army to take over those territories one by one? You must know that to be a hero in life and a hero in death is something that is enviable. Live as a hero, and die as a hero." Meng Yan muttered a few words and suddenly felt his heroic spirit soaring to the heavens. His eyes lit up, but soon dimmed. He shook his head and said, "I'm ashamed to say this. It's not that I don't want to, it's that I don't dare." Finished speaking, he smiled bitterly and didn't say another word. Oh. Yu Qianzhou guessed that the two of them had something to hide, but what did it have to do with him bringing them to Utopia? At this time, Yuji took over and said, "As Sir said before, we really can't leave the demon realm. If we can, with the strength of the army under General's command, it won't be difficult to change the Li clan's dynasty and make someone else the ruler. However, it's the same reason General is in the demon realm. It's not that we don't want to, but we don't dare." Yu Qianzhou sized up the two of them and asked suspiciously, "Could there be someone who can threaten General?" Yuji and Meng Yan exchanged glances. The former nodded and said, "There's indeed someone who can threaten General, and it's precisely because of his threat that the demon realm isn't in chaos. General's army doesn't dare to leave the demon realm, and the other demon Ghost King also doesn't dare to act recklessly because of that person's threat. She paid special attention to the word person and heat in her tone, clearly telling Yu Qianqiu that the person who could intimidate the demons and ghosts within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers was not some powerful demon Ghost King, but a living person. Who could have such a method? Yu Qianqiu's blood boiled when he heard this, and he asked in a sonorous voice, "Who is it?" Yu Ji looked nervous. She walked around the tent a few times and looked around from time to time, as if she was afraid that someone would hear what she said. Finally, she bit her lip and said, "Go straight south from here, and you can reach the center of the demon realm. There is a cultivator called by Changchun there." "What?" Yu Qianqiu exclaimed and took a step back, saying, "Cultivator. Are there really soul formation cultivators in this world?" Yu Qianqiu's blood boiled again. Heavens! It turned out that immortality was not a legend, but real. One must know that in the cultivation world, cultivation was generally divided into qi refining, foundation building, core formation, nascent soul, and tribulation passing. These 5 levels of cultivation, at the end of the tribulation passing stage, it was already very good to live for 700 to 800 years. Everyone pursued the path of cultivation, to prolong their lives. Only the legendary soul formation stage was a realm that was hovering on the doorstep of immortality. If one could live for a few thousand years, what was the difference between that and immortality? But after all, it was a legend. Some were true, and some were false. No one dared to guarantee it, and as time went by, it naturally became a legend. Yu Qianqiu was a person who had transmigrated. He believed that cultivation could prolong one's life, not to mention that he had already experienced it himself. But for the absurd thing of immortality, he would occasionally fantasize about it. Could a person really live forever? Live forever? He really couldn't find any scientific evidence, so he really didn't have any hope. But now, if what Yu Ji said was true, then what would happen? Yu Qianqiu asked again, "Is what Madame said true?" The temptation of immortality was too great for humans, not to mention a cultivator who had the chance to set foot on the starting line. "Of course it's true." Yu Ji smiled bitterly and said, "Actually, he was the one who helped the Ghost King, one of the top 10 demons in the Ghost domain, rise to power and was crowned as one of the top 10. After all, it's impossible for him to worry about everything in the Ghost domain alone. That's why he helped us restrain the other heroes in the Ghost domain." "Yes." Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air. It looked like it was true. Even if he did not gain anything from this trip to the demon realm, just this piece of information was worth it. He now had a new goal to pursue. "What does this have to do with you and your wife going to Utopia?" Yu Qianqiu was puzzled. In fact, he already had an answer in his heart. Yu Ji's face was a little pale, and she said with a trembling voice, "There was once a Ghost King who was infatuated with the mortal world when he was alive. He violated his rules and wanted to lead his subordinates into the human world. In the end, more than 100,000 people under the Ghost King were wiped out by him in an instant, and the Ghost King also ended up being destroyed, never to be reincarnated." Meng Yan sighed as well. It seemed that he too had a lingering fear. F***ck. That's too powerful. More than 100,000 ghost cultivators were wiped out in an instant. Perhaps only a soul formation cultivator could have such a method. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched non-stop, and he looked at Yu Ji, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Madam. You. Don't tell me the small favor you asked me to take you out of the ghost domain." These demons and ghosts were probably thinking about leaving the ghost domain all the time. After all, those who could reach the end of the tribulation transcendent stage, be it humans or demons or ghosts, would not want to be restrained, let alone be restrained by someone who could kill them at any time. But the key is that you guys bring your families with you when you go out. You don't just bring 1 or 2 people, you even want to bring your subordinates out. You want to dominate the outside world. If you really do that, the world will be in chaos. He now understood the thoughts of the Soul Formation Cultivator, by Changchun, which was to restrain these demons and ghosts here forever. It would be fine if they were obedient, but they would be killed without mercy if they were disobedient. There was no reason to reason with them. Yuji's expression also recovered at this time, and she smiled sweetly. Is Utopia in the ghost domain? Ah. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. It was not in the ghost domain, but it could also be said to be in the ghost domain because Utopia was with me. He smiled bitterly. Madam, you think too highly of me. Madam, you don't think that I have the ability to fight against a soul formation cultivator, do you? Chapter 117. Now, he was ready to give up on asking for their help. This matter was too dangerous. It was easy to bring them out, but if Bai Changchun found out one day, who knew what the consequences would be? It was not a good thing to be targeted by a legendary figure. It would be easy to take his life. To put it bluntly, he was afraid that he would not even have time to hide in Utopia. Overruling him was just a matter of a thought. Who would dare to help him in supporting Immortal Island? Who would be able to help him then? Yuji suddenly covered her mouth and giggled. She laughed so hard that Yu Qianqiu and Meng Yan were a little confused. After a long time, she stopped and said with a smile, "Are you afraid, mister? Damn it. I wonder if there is Africa here. Anyway, your skin is soft and tender, I will let you laugh to your heart's content." Yu Qianqiu put on a fake smile and asked, "Aren't you afraid?" Yuji was startled and couldn't laugh anymore. She shook her head and said, "Mister, you worry too much. Of course, I understand that this matter can't be done easily. I just want a promise from Mister. As long as you promise to fulfill your promise when you have the ability in the future, it will be fine." After saying that, she stared at him with her big, seductive eyes. Promise. Another promise. I owe Ma Jogu one, and now it's here again. Yu Qianqiu felt a headache when he heard the promise. He couldn't help but ask doubtfully, "How do you know that I will have the ability in the future? Don't you want to hear what I need your help with first? Aren't you afraid that you will be busy for nothing?" Yuji smiled. It was true that she was a female ghost with cultivation, but she was a woman who had experienced the prosperity of the world. She was a woman who was reluctant to leave the mortal world. She didn't want to stay in this drowsy place anymore. She didn't want to live a life where she could be destroyed at any time. After a year, 2 years, thousands of years, she really wanted to return to the human world. Although she couldn't walk in broad daylight due to the influence of the great law of heaven and earth, it was enough to sing and dance in the dim lights every night. Today, with Yu Qianqiu's zither in hand, he took the lead, completely evoking her long-hidden desire. When she was alive, she sang and danced to celebrate peace. If not me, who would take the lead? Although she was tempted, there was a powerful existence in the demon realm that made her tremble. She was helpless, helpless. Until Yu Qianqiu casually summoned a female demon in the late tribulation passing stage. Not only was the demon more beautiful than her, but the most unbearable thing was that while they were in the demon realm, she could leave at will and go wherever she wanted. From the conversation between Yu Qianqiu and her, it was obvious that there was a group of people who were more powerful than her, and a group of people who had a higher chance of entering the Huashan realm. Since Yu Qianqiu could easily summon such a figure with such a powerful background, Yuji's heart became active again. This might be an opportunity for her to leave this place that she had hated for thousands of years. No matter whether she could succeed or not, it was better to have hope than to have no hope. If Yu Qianqiu knew her thoughts, in addition to feeling sad for Meng Yan, he would also sigh. Women in his previous life and this life were all the same. Women who were used to wandering around the brothels were too wild and not suitable to be his wife. At least, he would not feel at ease as a pretty daughter of a humble family. As long as it doesn't make things too difficult for us, I and the General can agree to help Mr. with a small favor. Since Mr. is so talented, you must be a person who keeps his promises. No matter if you can do it in the future, I just want Mr. to promise me. After Yu Ji finished speaking, she saw that Yu Qianqiu was still hesitating. She immediately decided to increase the bargaining chip. She took a token from her waist and handed it over with a smile. This token is for Mr. In the future, within a radius of thousands of miles, as long as Mr. uses this token, no matter if it is a demon or a ghost, they will have to give you some face. Damn. This is a good thing. Yu Qianqiu subconsciously reached out to take it and stroked it. TSK. I heard that there are a lot of good spiritual herbs for alchemy in the demon ghost territory. Some good spiritual herbs that have long been extinct outside. Meng Yan suddenly opened his eyes wide. He really didn't understand why Madame would do such a thing. Could Yu Qianqiu help them out of the demon ghost territory? Was it worth giving away his Ghost King's token? Wouldn't Yu Qianqiu be able to do whatever he wanted here in the future? He immediately wanted to stop her. Yu Ji might know him too well. While Yu Qianqiu was not paying attention, she turned back and shook her head slightly. She winked at him, telling him that she would explain to him, but not now. Meng Yan paused. He remembered that Madame always had her own opinions. She must have some other intentions by doing this, so he didn't say anything. Since Madame is so kind, this, that. Yu Qianqiu mumbled and thought to himself, damn it. He would be an idiot if he didn't take such an obvious benefit. He immediately put away the token and promised solemnly, I promised Madame that when I have the ability, I will definitely bring you and your wife to Utopia. Even if you and your wife want to stay there for a long time, I can guarantee that the people there will definitely not reject the two of you. He specifically emphasized that it was a virtuous couple, just the two of them. He didn't want to take his entire army with him. Of course, since he had already said that he had the ability, he wouldn't mind taking them with him if he could be of use to his army in the future. Yu Ji's eyes lit up. The fact that the other party could add a hidden chess piece to his promise meant that he was someone who valued promises. He would not easily agree to things that he could not do, which made her feel more at ease. As for whether he would bring everyone away, it was not something she cared about. However, Yu Qianqiu saw that Meng Yan's face had already darkened. Clearly, he had already understood what he meant. It seemed like it was a little too much for him to take something that was not even a semi-finished product from him. Furthermore, something like the token could not be used just because the other party gave the order. It was not too safe. Ahem. Yu Qianqiu coughed and added to Yu Ji, as long as Madame's words are valid, you can take my words as an oath. What he meant was that as long as her words were valid, then he would have sworn to her just now. Cultivators would really suffer retribution if they made random oaths. However, if her words were not valid, then he could pretend that he did not say anything just now. Yu Qianqiu concluded that Yu Ji must be plotting something. Otherwise, she would not be so eager to throw herself at him. Yu Ji was even happier that he could say something like an oath. She chuckled and walked to Meng Yan's side. She pulled his arm and said, General, it seems that Mr. is afraid that my words are not valid. I hope that General will agree to it personally. The displeasure on Meng Yan's face disappeared in an instant. He nodded to Yu Qianqiu and said, Mr., please rest assured. Madame and I are one. Madame's words are my words. If there is anything that you need my help with, you can tell me now. General indeed has the demeanor of a general. Straightforward enough. Yu Qianqiu complimented. However, he glanced at Yu Ji from the corner of his eyes. This pillow talk is really powerful. You must remember. You must encourage yourself. Don't sink into it. He laughed in his heart. He remembered that his old enemy, Yen Shu, was hiding somewhere. He collected his thoughts and asked indifferently, "Great General, other than the disciples of the various sects in this military camp, there are also many people hiding in the surroundings. I believe that General already knows about this. How does General intend to deal with this?" Meng Yan suddenly stood up and laughed cruelly. "If Mr. didn't remind me, this General would have almost forgotten. I gave them an hour, but they actually turned a deaf ear to my words. Could it be that they still think they can get lucky? Hee. Very good. There is actually someone here who dares to not take my words seriously." As soon as he said this, he revealed a ferocious expression. Chapter 118. Yuji covered her mouth and giggled again. She helped Meng Yan up and said, "General, don't be anxious. Since Mr. has asked, I'm afraid it has something to do with what we need help with." "Mister, do you think I'm right?" The last sentence was directed at Yu Qianqiu. Tsk tisk. Yu Qianqiu shook his head regretfully. He gave a thumbs up and praised, "Madam is really smart. I can't hide anything from you." "That's right. The small favor that I need General and Madam's help has something to do with these people." Yuji looked ashamed. Meng Yan, on the other hand, was quite proud. To him, there was no difference between praising his wife and praising himself. He nodded and said, "How do you want me to help?" "Just say it, mister." Hee. Yu Qianqiu gnashed his teeth and said, "When we first arrived at Fae's sinister realm, those fellows clearly knew that there was danger, but they didn't warn us. Not only did they not warn us, but they actually ignored our friendship and left us behind. Fortunately, we encountered the great General, otherwise. In short, I really can't swallow this anger." Tsk. Meng Yan laughed and said, "So it's a group of selfish people who abandoned their friends and ran away. Very good. This General will definitely help you. What does Mr. want?" He was a seasoned soldier, and the thing he hated the most was people who abandoned their comrades and fled in the face of battle. Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, "General, please help me capture every single one of them. It's best if they're all alive. I want to do it myself and let them taste the feeling of living a life worse than death." "That's right, General. It's best to find a big tent and lock them up. It's really inconvenient to let the disciples outside see what we're doing. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain myself when I return." Ha! Meng Yan laughed heartily. He gave Yu Qianqiu a look as if he knew him very well. He then dragged his golden armor and walked out of the tent in big strides. "Mister." Yu Qianqiu was just about to follow Meng Yan out when he heard Yuji calling him. He turned around and asked, "What's the matter, madam?" The latter didn't say a word. When she walked past him, she pursed her lips into a smile and walked out of the tent, as if saying, "I know what you're planning." This caused Yu Qianqiu to be filled with rage. "Damn it. Forget it if you think you can pinch. What I hate the most is this kind of pretentious, self-righteous dog that doesn't eat shit." When he walked out of the tent, he happened to see Ghost General Meng Yan wave his hand, and dozens of riders led a group of people out of the camp. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, he only nodded slightly. He swayed and returned to the crowd standing at the foot of the stage. He ignored the questioning gazes from the disciples and closed his eyes to rest. Before long, the sounds of fighting suddenly appeared in the surroundings. At the top of the mountain, the expressions of the leading elders of the 6 great sects darkened. The scattered divine sense spots on the 6 divine sense compasses moved almost at the same time. There was no doubt that they were being attacked by an organized group, or else this would not have happened. At this moment, who else could organize an attack against hundreds of disciples from the various sects but Ghost General? Dongfang Chang Ao, what do you mean? Chiao Wuyuan asked for his opinion with a gloomy expression. Here, his 10,000 demons and supporting Immortal Island were undoubtedly the absolute leaders of the righteous and evil sections. Their opinions were basically the opinions of the three sections. Dongfang Chang Ao frowned. Although many disciples from the various sects would die every time they came here, it was also for the future development of the sections. If all of them died here, it would shock the 6 great sections. At the very least, they would have to consider whether they could use this method of training disciples again in the future. Seeing that he did not speak, Chiao Wuyuan said in a deep voice, I suggest that everyone go down the mountain and save the disciples of the 6 sections. Save as many as you can. Everyone stared at Dongfang Chang Ao. As long as he agreed, the righteous and evil sects would have reached an agreement. Dongfang Chang Ao frowned. Even if we go down, can we save them? I need to consult the sect before making a decision. Pfft. Chiao Wuyuan sneered. Consult the sect. By the time you're supporting Immortal Island sends people here, it will be too late. By then, they won't be saving people, but collecting corpses. But it makes sense. Your supporting Immortal Island is rich and has many powerful people. A few disciples dying is nothing. Elder Quan of supporting Immortal Island could not take it anymore. He immediately shouted, Chiao Wuyuan, are you looking for trouble? Chiao Wuyuan glanced at him coldly and said with disdain, who do you think you are? Since when did supporting Immortal Island have the right to speak? Once he said that, the other elders of supporting Immortal Island immediately surrounded him and cheered him on. Once supporting Immortal Island made a move, the 10,000 demons did not want to be outdone. The elders also surrounded him. As a result, the other 4 sects helped their own sides. The righteous and evil sects instantly stood against each other. Chiao Wuyuan. Dongfang Chang Ao glared at him. His white hair and beard moved even though there was no wind. He said coldly, supporting Immortal Island's cultivation pavilion has never been afraid of anyone. If you want to cause trouble, look at the situation now. After this matter is over, I will welcome you at any time. He immediately shouted at the elders, help me send a message. The elders unwillingly retreated and surrounded him, placing their palms on his body. Dongfang Chang Ao raised a jade stone and infused the power of 10 people into it. Instantly, the jade stone gave off a dazzling white light. After muttering a few incantations, the jade stone turned into dust with a pa sound. Everyone from the various sects secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. Even Chiao Wuyuan's brows couldn't help but twitch. An ordinary voice transmission could be done as long as one's cultivation had reached the tribulation passing stage. However, a voice transmission that was thousands of miles away wasn't something that could be done by just gathering a few people. It required the combined strength of a few people to reach the tribulation passing stage. The other sects questioned themselves. They didn't have the ability to do so, including the 10,000 demons. After the people of supporting Immortal Island dispersed, they acted like it was no big deal. This shocked the other sects even more. Dongfang Chang Ao nodded at everyone and said, the message has been sent to my Heaven Heart Pavilion. Later, there will be. He suddenly paused and closed his eyes to focus. After a while, he opened his eyes and looked at everyone. My Heaven Heart Pavilion has sent a decree from the sect master. Disciples of supporting Immortal Island, please be calm and don't act rashly. Heaven Heart Pavilion has sent 6 final stage crossing tribulation stage experts to come here at top speed. The 9 elders of supporting Immortal Island were delighted. They bowed and said, we will follow the sect master's decree. The elders of the other sects looked at each other in dismay. As expected of the supporting Immortal Island, it was worthy of being the #1 sect in the world. Just a casual move was enough to send out 6 consecrators at the final stage of the crossing of tribulations. Qiu Weiyuan snorted coldly and didn't say anything. After all, it was unrealistic to rely on the 3 demonic sects to go down the mountain and rescue people without the help of the righteous sections. Moreover, 6 of the supporting Immortal Islands consecrators were coming here at top speed. With their cultivation, they would arrive very soon. Not good. Everyone, look. A Deluo sect elder pointed at the divine sense compass and shouted. Everyone couldn't be bothered with the small conflict that had just happened. They gathered together to watch. The disciples of the various sects who were hiding in the surroundings gathered together. Moreover, the divine sense light spots were dimmer. It was obvious that they were all injured. Ghost General is so powerful. He actually captured all of them. Dongfang Chang Ao. Qiu Weiyuan retracted his gaze from the divine sense compass. He raised his head and sneered. Now, all the sects are counting on the 6 consecrators of supporting Immortal Island. I hope they will arrive soon. Otherwise, we will have to collect their corpses. Chapter 119. One by one, the disciples of the 6 sects were escorted into the military camp by the ghost soldiers and generals. They staggered as they walked, and all of them had injuries on their bodies. They looked dispirited, and there were close to 400 of them. The disciples who took the initiative to visit looked at the seniors who were captured with different expressions. It was hard to tell if they were gloating or pitying them. They could only watch as they were locked up in a few big tents. As for what would happen next, no one knew. After Yu Qinchou's gaze found his old enemy in the crowd, he retracted it without stopping. He wiped away the smile on his face and turned to the crowd, shaking his head and sighing. Sigh. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. I'll go and beg the general to let them off. As he spoke, he staggered towards the central tent. Not a single ghost soldier or general stopped him. Actually, none of the disciples of the 6 sects wanted him to plead for them. However, they could only keep their thoughts to themselves and not say it out loud. When Meng Yan saw Yu Qianchou enter, he chuckled. Everyone's dantian is sealed, and they can't fight back. Mister, if you have something to do, you can go and do your own thing. No one will disturb you. Yu Qianchou chuckled and cupped his hands to thank him. He turned around and walked out. He came to a big tent where the disciples of the 6 sects were locked up and looked around. As expected, he didn't see any of Meng Yan's subordinates. The people who were locked up lifted their heads weakly and were shocked when they saw the person who came. Some of them had even met Yu Qianchou at the peak of the mountain. How could this disciple of Fuxian Island come and go as he pleased? Yu Qianchou couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense, and there was no need for him to. After contacting Bai Suzhen in Utopia, he immediately made his move, and the people he touched disappeared one by one. He clapped his hands and looked around at the empty tent. Expressionlessly, he went to the next tent and did the same thing. Finally, he entered the tent where Yan Shu was locked in. Under the latter's terrified gaze, he cleared everyone around him and stood in front of him. He rolled up his sleeves and smiled. Martial Uncle Yan, I finally get to see you. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Sigh. I can finally resolve one of my worries. Yan Shu was inexplicably terrified. He staggered backwards. Yu Qianchou, what are you doing? Pa! Yu Qianchou walked over and gave him a heavy slap, causing him to fall to the ground. He then jumped up and stomped on Yan Shu, cursing. Fuck, do you think you can call my name so casually? Yan Shu howled as he crawled everywhere. His dantian was now sealed, and his body was only slightly better than a normal person's. How could he endure the punches and kicks of Yu Qianchou chasing after him? His nose and mouth were bleeding non-stop. After a while, Yu Qianqiu straightened his back and let out a deep breath. It feels so good to beat my enemy. Fuck, I haven't felt so good in a long time. He stretched his chest, clenched his fists, and loosened his muscles. He rolled up his fallen sleeves again. This time, he rolled them up high to prevent them from falling again. He walked over to Yan Shu, who was hiding under the long table, and gave him a slap. Then, he smiled. Now you know what I'm going to do, right? Based on our good relationship, what do you think I'm going to do? Of course, I'm going to F***CKU. Yan Shu, who had been beaten out of shape, had blood all over his face. He mumbled, Yu Qianqiu, if you dare to treat me like this, my father won't let you go. Hee hee. What AF** king genius. Yu Qianqiu sneered. You idiot, who won't let who go? You're already in your 70s or 80s, yet you still bring up your old bastard father to scare people. You better think about what last words you want me to pass on to your father. With a "pa" sound, Yan Shu's nose was smashed flat. Blood splattered everywhere. Yu Qianqiu's blood-stained hands became even more bloody. Quick, call me father. Maybe I'll let you go if I'm in a good mood. Yu Qianqiu pulled his blood-stained clothes and shouted. Then, he slapped Yan Shu again and shouted, Bastard, why are you pretending to be dead? Call me father now. Huff, huff. Yan Shu, who could no longer breathe through his nose, could only use his mouth to breathe. His teeth had all fallen off. He desperately raised his head that was hanging to one side. Suddenly, with a "pu" sound, he spat a mouthful of blood on Yu Qianqiu's face. You're courting death. Yu Qianqiu roared. With a "yeah" sound, he pulled Yan Shu's head and gave him a heavy punch. The latter's head made a crisp sound and drooped on his back. He was no longer breathing. Yu Qianqiu, who was in a rage, did not notice that he was already dead. He pressed Yan Shu to the ground unwillingly and punched him until his head was smashed into pieces. Only then did he stand up. He raised his arm to wipe the blood off his face. His sleeve was instantly dyed red. His blood-stained face looked a little ferocious. He looked at the corpse on the ground and murmured, I think Shen Feng said that human skin is a good material for making high-class talismans. I can't waste it. He lifted his leg and the corpse disappeared without a trace. A pool of blood was left on the ground. He did not see his current image. He put down his sleeves and patted his clothes. Instead, he walked out of the tent as if nothing had happened. He walked towards the main tent. As soon as he entered, he found Meng Yan and Yu Ji staring at him blankly. He had also come to his senses now. Just now, he was immersed in the pleasure of killing his enemy with his own hands. He was in high spirits and did not care about the blood on his body at all. Yu Qianqiu smiled embarrassedly, I really did it by accident. Did it by accident? Did he accidentally get it all over his body? What did this guy do to those people? Meng Yan and Yu Ji exchanged glances. After the former asked someone to bring him to take a bath, the couple went to the 3 big tents together. They were all empty except for one of the big tents that was covered with blood. Where were the people? Where did they go? They also called the ghost soldiers outside to ask. They all said that they did not see any prisoners coming out. They only heard screams coming from inside. The two of them looked at each other in dismay. They knew that there were some cultivators in this world who would cultivate some demonic arts and evil techniques. However, in such a short period of time, nearly 400 people were turned into nothingness. It was a little too terrifying. Just thinking about it made the two of them shudder. This kid was a little evil. After taking a bath, Yu Qianqiu felt comfortable all over. Moreover, he had killed Yan Shu. He felt refreshed. He took out a set of clothes from his storage bag and put them on. Then, he returned to the main tent. He took a few steps forward and cupped his hands in greeting to the couple sitting behind the main table. "Thank you, great general and madam, for letting me vent my anger." "You're welcome, Mr." Meng Yan raised his hand and gestured for him to sit down. He smiled and said, "It's fate that I can meet you today. Unfortunately." Sigh. "The sky is getting brighter. It's not convenient for me to ask you to stay." Yu Qianzhou also knew that no matter how powerful Meng Yan and the others were, they would not dare to come out in broad daylight. This was the restriction of the laws of heaven and earth. Otherwise, their souls would definitely be destroyed. He nodded and asked, "Is General going to break camp?" "Yes." Meng Yan raised his hand and pointed to the south. He said, 1,000 miles to the south, there is a canyon called Valley of Een Wind. It is my headquarters. Mister, if you have time, please come and visit." "Thank you, Great General. If that's the case, I'll take my leave. I'll definitely pay you a visit another day." Yu Qianzhou stood up and said. Now was not the time to talk. If he stayed any longer, he would only bring trouble to them. The laws of heaven and earth were merciless. "Please." Meng Yan raised his hand. Then, he and Yu Ji saw him off. Below the stage, Yu Qianzhou once again turned around to thank the two of them. Then, he quickly led the disciples of the 6 sects out of the camp. "Break camp." With a command, everyone in the camp started to move. Not long after, they were ready. The army from the world of spirits and souls disappeared in front of the disciples of the 6 sections. Those disciples from the other sects who were captured were also nowhere to be seen. Yu Qianzhou looked back at the crowd and smiled bitterly. Those seniors didn't show up in an hour, which angered the Ghost General. It was useless no matter how much I tried. In the end, they all sigh. The crowd was already very grateful to him for surviving the disaster. Moreover, they were not interested in those seniors from the other sections. Hence, they all comforted him and advised him not to blame himself. Chapter 120. Yu Qianzhou looked at everyone with a bleak expression. He kept shaking his head and blaming himself, but he was complaining in his heart. He wanted to ask the Ghost General to help him take these people away, but he still had many things to rely on Fuxian Island to do. Moreover, the old farts on the mountain had a **T divine sense compass. If he went back alone, he would definitely arouse suspicion. However, there were benefits to keeping these people. At least it could prove that the hundreds of disciples from various sects had nothing to do with him. Forget it. It was not bad to get a group of nascent soul and core formation stage cultivators. At least they were stronger than these people who were mostly in the foundation establishment stage. It would save him more energy to help them improve their cultivation. He could think about the rest later. Everyone. Brothers and sisters from various sects, please listen to me. Yu Qianzhou seemed to have thought it through instantly. He shouted to everyone, "Everyone, disperse. It's only been a day. There's still a long way to go. Everyone, take care." After that, he waved at Ko Shuahua, the girls, and Gu Qingyun. "Let's go." They nodded and followed him into the depths of the demon ghost region. After walking for a short while, they realized that something was wrong. They looked back and saw a group of female disciples from the Moon Clan not far behind them. Behind them were disciples from various sections. They were following them at a distance that was neither too close nor too far away. It was the first time these people came to the demon ghost region. As for those who had experience, they were all taken into Utopia by Yu Qianzhou. Hearing that they were going to disperse, they immediately felt that something was missing. The demon ghost region before the sky was completely dark looked gloomy and terrifying. Everyone didn't know where to go. The disciples of the Moon Clan were all women. Subconsciously, they followed Yu Qianqiu, who they thought was strong. After all, Yu Qianqiu's performance that night was too strong. He wasn't even afraid of the ghost general. It should be much safer to follow him. After all, women naturally liked to follow men who gave them a sense of security. After this night, Yu Qianqiu seemed to have become the backbone of the disciples of the various sections. The disciples of the various sects already wanted to follow. At first, they were still hesitating. Seeing that the Moon Clan was following, they naturally followed suit. Just like that, everyone followed from a distance. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. "Why are you following us?" The disciples of the various sects gathered together again and suddenly felt very safe. No one answered him. After a while, a female disciple of the Moon Clan pouted and said, "The demon ghost region is so big. How can you say that we will follow you? We can go whichever way we want. How could it be so coincidental?" Yu Qianqiu thought about it for a bit and understood. They were afraid. However, it felt good to be able to be relied on by others. If you were afraid, just say it. But this girl was still so stubborn. Yu Qianqiu smiled slightly and wanted to tease them. He nodded and said, "So it was us who blocked your way." Then, he smiled at Gu Qingyun and the others. "Let's make way. Let the sisters of the Moon Clan go first." They smiled and made way for him. The female disciples of the Moon Clan were instantly embarrassed. They didn't know whether to leave or stay. In the end, the stubborn female disciple said to a slightly older girl beside her, "Senior sister, let's go. Otherwise, people will look down on the Moon Clan." Then, she was about to pull her forward. The senior sister stopped her and said, "Don't talk nonsense. The Moon Clan has always been on good terms with Fuxian Island." She turned around and bowed to Yu Qianqiu. "Lan Xinyue, the 19th generation disciple of the Moon Clan, greets senior brother Yu." "Don't mention it." Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands casually and said. Although she was pretty, there were many beautiful girls in the cultivation world. If they weren't outstanding, there was nothing special about them. Lan Xinyue smiled and said, "Senior brother Yu, you are very talented. Please don't mind my junior sister. We have just entered the demon region and we are in a precarious situation. If you have any good suggestions, please enlighten us." Those words are pleasing to the ear. Yu Qianqiu nodded, then turned to the stubborn woman and roared fiercely, "Girl, if you have nothing better to do, learn from your eldest senior sister. If you speak nonsense again in the future, you'll suffer greatly sooner or later." "You." The female disciple was about to fight back but was dragged back by her peers. Yu Qianqiu didn't want to talk to her anymore. He cupped his hands at the disciples and said, "It was pure coincidence that we met the ghost general when he was out on patrol. I don't think something like this will happen again. The sky is about to brighten. It will be the world of all kinds of demons soon. We will be too big a target if we stay together. It will be safer if we disperse. It will be best if we find a place where no one can find us. In fact, I am also in a precarious situation. I can't solve it by playing the Guqin with any demon. It is also dangerous for you to follow me. Take care of yourselves." That was all. No matter if they listened to him or not, he couldn't lead them around the demon region. So what if he protected them? They would go their separate ways after they left the demon region. How many people would remember him? It was the world of cultivation. That was it. "Let's go." Yu Qianqiu disappeared in front of everyone with his companions. Everyone thought about it and felt that what he said made sense. Instantly, it became lively, and a new round of forming teams and groups began. The elders of the 6 major sects on the mountain peak looked very gloomy. From the divine sense compass, they could see that the light spots of the captured disciples had all disappeared. According to common sense, this meant that they were all dead. What a heavy loss. There was no doubt that these disciples were the elites of the various sections. What was strange was that the disciples who had gathered together seemed to be fine. Now, they had scattered. Whoosh! A few sharp sounds of fast flying came from afar. When everyone looked up, they found that there were 6 elders on the mountain peak. The one in the lead was Ma Jyogu, who was holding a walking stick. Obviously, the 6 elders of the supporting immortal island had arrived. The elders of the various sects were secretly shocked. As expected of an expert at the late stage of the crossing tribulation. They traveled thousands of kilometers in just a few hours. Moreover, they were flying in the sky without any support. What a profound cultivation and fast speed. Dongfang Chang Ao was also shocked. How come even the oldest Ma Jyogu of the supporting immortal island had come? He quickly led the other 9 elders to salute and said, "Greetings, Jyogu, greetings, 6 elders." The other sects, regardless of whether it was the righteous or evil Tao, went over to greet them. In any case, their age and cultivation were there. Ma Jyogu gently poked him with her walking stick and said in a deep voice, "Chang Ao, tell me what happened." Dongfang Chang Ao nodded and immediately explained the ins and outs of the matter. After listening, Ma Jyogu said in a deep voice, "There's no time to lose. The 6 sects will split up to save people. I will stay with the supporting immortal island. The 5 of you will go to 1 sect each and save as many as you can." The 5 elders and 5 elders behind her agreed. At this moment, even the bad-tempered Chiu Wuyuan didn't dare to act recklessly in front of these people. Chapter 121. It was already dawn, but the search for the disciples of the various sects went quite smoothly. With the divine sense compass as a guide, the small demons they encountered along the way could not stop the footsteps of dozens of crossing calamity stage cultivators. The disciples were found one by one and escorted by several elders to the mountaintop's large array. On the way, many disciples were saved when confronting the evildoers. The disciples of the various sects who returned to the mountaintop rejoiced. They knew that the trial this time would probably end prematurely. Good stuff, good stuff. This demon domain is really a good place. Yu Qianqiu held a strand of strange-looking grass that had just been dug out and laughed wildly. Not far away, Ko Shuahua was holding a bloody sword in her hand. She was panting and staring at him with a face full of resentment. Not far away, there was a dead python lying on the ground. "Senior brother Yu, aren't we running a little too far?" Gu Qingyun sized up the surroundings, and the more he walked, the more apprehensive he became. Yu Qianqiu had purposely chosen to walk through the dangerous terrain, and he had already walked for a very long distance. When he saw some unknown flowers and grass, they jumped faster than rabbits, and he ran over to dig them up. Fortunately, there was Ko Shuahua, who was at the nascent soul stage, among them. When they encountered danger on the way, they had to rely on her to solve it. However, Yu Qianqiu was still unrepentant. The dangers of demon domain were nothing in his eyes, but the flowers and plants seemed to be his lifeblood. Even the other girls were infected by his emotions. It seemed that demon domain was really nothing. When they saw flowers and plants that they had never seen before, they didn't forget to cheer and remind him. Yu Qianqiu threw the things in his hand into the storage bag and patted Gu Qingyun's shoulder with a smile. "Gu Qingyun, how many times have I told you? From today on, you have to call me boss, not senior brother. Although my cultivation is a little higher than yours, I don't like it. Don't forget what you said before. As long as you can leave demon domain alive, you will be mine." An. We all heard it, we can testify. Xiao Wanqing and the other two girls chuckled along. The three of them had a great time following Yu Qianqiu, but they didn't know that Ko Shuihua, who had been in danger along the way, had suffered. They only knew how to cheer for Ko Shuihua. Gu Qingyun smiled bitterly. Yu Qianqiu never forgot to remind him of that matter, and it seemed like he really took it seriously. What should he say? And he was also more rational than the three girls. They hadn't met any powerful demons yet, so Ko Shuihua could still deal with them. But if Yu Qianqiu continued to act like this, sooner or later, he would cause a disaster. But what could he do about the other party's current prestige being too high? All the girls listened to his words, while his words carried little weight and he was alone. Ayaya! Yu Qianqiu suddenly pointed at a mountain not far away that was shrouded in mist. He sighed and said, "Mist of spiritual qi, wind blowing endlessly, what a place with abundant spiritual qi. There must be something unusual over there, let's go and take a look." No. There's something wrong in front, I'm afraid there's some powerful demon. Ko Shuihua suddenly stopped him. She pulled a strand of hair that was messed up because of the fight to the back of her ear. Her eyes stared at the place that Yu Qianqiu pointed out. Compared to the surroundings, there were rare tall trees and dense forests. Furthermore, there was no sound at all. She had already noticed that place. Based on her intuition, it must be very dangerous. Gu Qingyun also felt that something was wrong. Along the way, they could hear some strange and terrifying cries. Why was there no sound at all when they got close? It was too quiet. He couldn't help but nod and said, "Grandmaster Ko is right. Senior Marshal Brother Yu, let's take a detour." As for boss, he still couldn't bring himself to call him. No need. Leave everything to me. I'll make sure you'll be fine. Yu Qianqiu said and took the lead. The three girls exchanged glances. Someone had veto power. His objection was invalid. Thus, they happily followed him. Blind worship. Ko Shuihua and Gu Qingyun looked at each other and shook their heads with a bitter smile. They had no choice but to follow him. The mountains were empty, and the trees were tall and dense. The vegetation was full of vitality. After passing through a dense forest, they stopped at the foot of a mountain that wasn't too high. The top of the mountain was shrouded by the mist of spiritual energy. As they breathed, a rich fragrance drifted everywhere. Their noses could always catch a trace of a unique fragrance that was faintly discernible. In such a place, there was a winding path leading to the mountain. At the starting point, there was a stone tablet that made them want to go up the mountain. "Trespassers shall be killed. The three saints of Lingwu." Gu Qingyun read the words on the tablet and looked at Yu Qianqiu with Ko Shuihua. Seeing such a message that left no room for negotiation, the three girls were a little hesitant. The three saints of Lingwu. Are they humans, demons, or ghosts? What are they? Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and wondered. He stared at the words on the stone tablet and muttered to himself, "Who is so awesome?" The three saints of Lingwu. Judging from the title, it seems that they are not ordinary people. I wonder if Ghost General's Ghost King token can protect them. It seemed that Yu Ji had said that all demons and ghosts within thousands of miles had to show respect to the token. Thinking of this, Yu Qianqiu felt relieved. He ran his true core, put his hands together and made a trumpet over his mouth. Then, he shouted toward the mountain, "Are the three saints of Lingwu on the mountain? I'm here to visit you." His voice rolled up the mountain. The others were shocked. What is he doing? Is he afraid that they don't know that someone is trespassing? Who is shouting at the foot of the mountain? Immediately, a voice came back from the mountain. Three gray shadows streaked past. Two of them were strange-looking old men, and a beautiful and seductive woman dressed in revealing clothes. In an instant, they arrived in front of the group. The two sides looked at each other. At a glance, Ko Shuahua could tell that the three people's cultivation was far higher than hers. She began to feel anxious and blamed Yu Qianqiu for running around. Gu Qingyun sighed. I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse. What is this guy doing? Is there something wrong with his brain? Or has he never seen danger? I've never seen him afraid of anything. Seeing that the atmosphere was not right, the three arrogant women also felt a little timid. After a while, Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and said with a smile, I'm Yu Qianqiu. I saw the beautiful scenery on the mountain and wanted to visit it. When I came to the foot of the mountain and saw the stone tablet, I realized that it was already occupied. So, please forgive me for disturbing you. Are you kidding me? Sightseeing in the demon domain. Do you think you are a demon king or a ghost king? Even we dare not boast like that. The three saints of Ling Wu looked at each other. There are 6 people, and they are all ordinary people with mediocre cultivation. I can't see through the leader's cultivation. Judging from his appearance, his cultivation should not be very high. Seeing that the 3 people did not speak, Yu Qianqiu smiled again and said, I guess the 3 of you must be the famous 3 saints of Ling Wu. I've heard a lot about you. Now that I see you, you really live up to your reputation. The people behind him felt a chill run down their spines. This guy can say anything. Just now, they didn't know who the 3 saints of Ling Wu were, but now they had heard a lot about them. Hearing that, an old man with a head full of blonde hair laughed and said, I was wondering who dared to trespass on the Spirit Fog Mountain. It turns out that there are only a few people. He deliberately emphasized the word people in his words, which undoubtedly told the other party that the 3 of them were not human. Ha! Indeed, rare guests. The coquettish woman laughed so hard that her breasts shook. Another old man with a decent appearance stuck out his tongue and licked his lips in disgust. He said with a strange smile, since you've heard a lot about us, you should know about our reputation in the demon ghost territory. You dared to trespass here with such low cultivation? How refreshing. It seems that we're in luck today. I haven't tasted human flesh for a long time. Swoosh. Seeing that the situation was not right, they quickly pulled out their swords. Ko Shuahua even held her sword and stood in front of Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked at her with a gratified expression and nodded to himself. He raised his hand and gently pushed her away. Then, he stood up straight, causing the people behind him to be shocked. Humph! 3 little monsters dare to make a name for themselves in the demon ghost territory. Even the Monster King and Ghost King, who are in charge of thousands of miles around this place, do not dare to be presumptuous in front of me. Who do you think you are? Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully. He slowly raised a black token in his hand toward the 3 monsters. Chapter 122. Hee, ignorant junior, speaking such arrogant words. Since you want to die quickly. Gaw. The yellow-haired old monster's words came to an abrupt halt, and his eyes widened to the size of an egg. The other 2 monsters also widened their eyes and held their breaths. They stared at the token in Yu Qianqiu's hand, and the smile and arrogance on their faces instantly disappeared. There was nothing superfluous on the dark token. On the reverse was the word order, which was held in Yu Qianqiu's palm. On the front was a pair of deep eyes. If one were to look at it carefully, they would find that there was a kind of bewitching feeling that was difficult to shake off, and their attention would be drawn to it. The 3 monsters shook their heads, and with great difficulty, they shifted their attention away from the token. They didn't dare to look at it again, and their faces instantly turned pale. The coquettish woman said in a trembling voice, Ghost King. Token. Yu Qianqiu's face was as dark as still water, and he slowly put away the token. Suddenly, an imposing aura burst out from his body, covering the three trembling monsters. This kind of imposing aura was unique to those who had long controlled the life and death of others. It was not something that could be faked. The three no longer dared to doubt that he was making things up and using the Demon King and the Ghost King as a shield. They couldn't help but subconsciously take a step back. The coquettish woman's lips moved, and she wanted to say something. Just as she raised her head, she saw a pair of cold and emotionless eyes looking at her like she was an ant, as if he could crush her at any time. It was the same gaze as the Ghost King's token, indifferent to everything. She was so scared that she lowered her head again, and her body trembled even more. The three monsters secretly wanted to slap themselves. They clearly knew that they couldn't see through the other party's cultivation, but they didn't know to be more cautious. They didn't even think about it. If the other party didn't have any strength, would he dare to wander around the demon domain like this? Ko Xiuhua and the rest were dumbfounded. Just a moment ago, he was so arrogant, saying that he wanted to eat their meat. But now, he was like a mouse that had seen a cat. He was so frightened by Yu Qianqiu that he didn't even dare to raise his head. They didn't see the token in Yu Qianqiu's hand, and they didn't hear what the coquettish woman said. All they saw was Yu Qianqiu pushing the three freaks away. They guessed that he was holding something in his hand that scared the three freaks. The swords in the hands of Xiao Wanqing and the other two girls slowly drooped down. They had always blindly worshipped Yu Qianqiu. Along the way, they had never had the chance to see him unleash his power. Who would have thought that once he unleashed his power, even Ko Xiuhua would be afraid of a demon that she couldn't deal with? Then, they looked at Yu Qianqiu's back. He was as lofty as a mountain and as deep as an abyss. It gave them a sense of security. The eyes of the three girls lit up, filled with little stars. What? You don't want to eat my meat anymore? Yu Qianqiu's voice was like the cold air in 10,000 years of ice. There wasn't the slightest emotion in it, which made the people behind him tense up. The strange thing was that the three freaks were shocked by his words at first. Then, they lowered their heads and exchanged glances. They calmed down. Yu Qianqiu suddenly saw a trace of fierceness in the eyes of the three freaks, as if they were ready to do something big. Yu Qianqiu's heart shuddered. He thought to himself, damn it. I've been too pretentious. The three freaks probably think that I won't let them go and want to take a risk. After thinking for a while, he opened his mouth and said in a much softer tone, forget it. Ignorance is not a crime. It seems that the three of you haven't gone deep into the central area of the demon domain in the south. I think those who have seen my master and me there wouldn't dare to do this to me in the demon domain. Even the Demon King and the Ghost King wouldn't dare to do this to me even if they had 10,000 guts. The three freaks were shocked again, and their eyes were full of shock. His master was in the central area of the demon domain. There was indeed a person in the legend of that place. It was a person that the demon ghosts in the demon domain didn't even dare to mention. Most of the demon ghosts with low cultivation didn't even know about it. How could he know? There was only one possibility left. His master might really be that person. Otherwise, how could the Ghost General give the Ghost King's token to an ordinary person? It was just that he had never heard of that person having a disciple. Suddenly, the coquettish woman bit her lip and bowed. She deliberately pretended to not understand and asked, "May I know who your master is? Can you tell us so that we can broaden our horizons?" The other two freaks also looked at her in agreement. Damn it! None of the beautiful women in this place are simple. But no matter how smart you are, you still have to drink the water that I wash my feet with. Yu Qianqiu glanced at her and sighed leisurely. You are really three inexperienced little freaks. Fine, I'll tell you my master's name so that you can broaden your horizons and know who you can't afford to offend. The three freaks respectfully said yes again and again. My master's surname is... Bai. Shut up. Yu Qianqiu suddenly changed his tone and shouted. He seemed to think of something and didn't forget to glance at the people behind him. Then he turned back and said coldly, "Do you think my master's name is something that you can casually inquire about?" The three freaks looked at each other. Sure enough, his surname was Bai. In this demon domain, only one person with the surname Bai was qualified to live in the center of the demon domain. That was Bai Changchun, who had already reached the soul formation stage. It just so happened that Yu Qianqiu's action fell into the eyes of the three freaks. It seemed that he didn't want the people around him to know who his master was, so he told them to shut up. If it wasn't that his master was aloof from the world, why would he worry about his master's name being known by others? We were wrong. Mister, please don't be angry. We don't dare to inquire about your master's name anymore. The three freaks did want to kill him, but now they were so scared that they knelt down and kowtowed, begging for mercy. They didn't dare to have any improper thoughts anymore. What a joke. Anyone who knew Bai Changchun would know that he was famous for being cold-blooded and ruthless. He could do anything he wanted with a flip of his hand. As long as he was unhappy, there was no other way to reason with him. There was only one result, death without mercy. If Bai Changchun's disciple really had an accident here, which demonic ghost in this area could escape? They would be killed by him with a raise of his hand. Ko Xiuhua and the others were stunned. At first, they thought that Yu Qianqiu said his master's surname was Bai, but later they realized that he was telling them to shut up. It must be that he was deliberately mystifying to scare the three freaks. Otherwise, even if he said Elder Guan's name, few people in the demon domain would know. Yu Qianqiu was very happy. Bai Changchun's name was really useful in this area. When the three freaks were almost done kowtowing, he waved his hand indifferently and said, "Forget it. I am not a person who is calculative. Since I said that those who don't know are not guilty, the three of you can be at ease. Get up. Don't make me unhappy again, or there won't be a next time." The three freaks crawled up obediently and stood by his side, waiting for his orders. "Don't be nervous." Yu Qianqiu patted the yellow-haired old freak's shoulder and looked around with a smile. "Look at the spiritual mist, it does have the taste of the misty rain in the Jiangnan area. The scenery is unique. Let us up the mountain to have a look." The three freaks quickly bowed and led the way. However, they heard Yu Qianqiu whisper behind them, "If there is a chance, I can bring my master here to have a look." When the three demons in front heard this, their minds were in a daze. They staggered and almost fell to the ground in fright. The three freaks exchanged glances and smiled bitterly. "My ancestors. It's troublesome enough for you to come. Don't bring your master here. If your master comes and doesn't like us, he can casually raise his hand and we don't know if we will have a next life." However, they couldn't say no. Bai Changchun is not welcome. If this gets out, how can I survive in the demon domain? Chapter 123. The disciples at the foot of the mountain were almost all found, but unfortunately, there were still many disciples who encountered danger and couldn't return. When Dongfang Chang Ao returned from sending another batch of disciples up the mountain, Ma Zhugu asked in a deep voice, "Are the disciples of the various sects almost all back?" The divine sense compass of each sect shows that we have found all the people who are still alive. Dongfang Chang Ao took out a miniature version of the divine sense compass and frowned. On the contrary, there are still 6 people from my Fuxian island who haven't been found. Strange, why did they run so far away? Who else? Ma Zhugu's eyebrows twitched unconsciously. She personally followed the elders of Fuxian island to search, but she didn't see Yu Qianqiu. She was afraid that he had already met with misfortune, but she still hoped that he was among the remaining 6 people. Dongfang Chang Ao stared at the light dots on the divine sense compass and answered, one disciple each from the Cultivation Pavilion, Alchemy Pavilion, and Enrich Pavilion, as well as 3 disciples from the 10,000 Fragrance Garden. Elder Quan and Elder Sun glanced at the divine sense compass and sighed in their hearts. This kid is really restless, why did he run so far away? At this moment, several figures flashed over and called out, Jyogu. They were the 4 consecrators of Fuxian Island, and the last one was left to guard the mountain peak. Ma Jyogu looked at them and said, My Fuxian Island still has 6 disciples who are still alive and haven't returned. We can't abandon them. Of course. One of the consecrators replied, and the other 3 nodded. Ha! A hearty laughter came from afar. Last night, I heard that Brother Meng came here to welcome guests. Today, there are guests, so how can I, Aoli, dare to slack off? I especially came to greet the honored guests. Who is Aoli? Everyone was slightly startled. Judging from the voice, the cultivation of the person who came was not weaker than them. However, Ma Jyogu's expression became a bit excited. Her drooping eyelids suddenly opened and she stared at the source of the voice. Not long after, they saw a soft palanquin made of green vines, carried by 4 bearers, walking in the air. It seemed to be moving very slowly, but it soon landed in front of everyone. These 4 bearers had very high cultivation to be able to walk in the air. Who was it that could make people like them carry the palanquin? Everyone from the supporting Immortal Island stared at the figure behind the veil, wondering who it was. The 4 porters lifted the palanquin off their shoulders and placed it securely on the ground. The one in front turned around and lifted the veil on the palanquin, revealing the true face of the person inside. A middle-aged man dressed in a green scholarly robe that seemed to have been washed to the point that it was a little pale. He gently waved a folding fan as he lazily reclined on the soft sedan chair. As the veil was pulled up, the man gradually stood up. His black hair was tied at the top of his head, his sword-like eyebrows were slightly raised, and his pitch-black eyes that shone like stars swept across the crowd. What an elegant man! However, it was a little strange for it to appear here. When the man's gaze fell on Ma Jyogu, he suddenly froze. He gently waved the folding fan in his hand and stood up from the sedan chair. He said with a smile, I was wondering who this esteemed guest was. It turns out to be an old acquaintance. Everyone from the supporting Immortal Island heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Ma Jyogu. It was good that he was an old acquaintance. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a good thing to fight with someone with such a high cultivation in the demon domain. Moreover, the 4 porters beside him didn't look like people to be trifled with. One of the consecrators asked, Aunt, do you know him? The one who asked was the previous sect master of the supporting Immortal Island, Guan Dinghai, who was also Ma Jyogu's nephew. Unexpectedly, Ma Jyogu gritted her teeth and said, Not only do I know him, my face was ruined by him. Ah! Guan Dinghai screamed, and the others were even more startled. Wasn't that an enemy? Everyone immediately became vigilant. Everyone knew that Ma Jyogu's cultivation had reached the final phase of the tribulation 300 years ago. Back then, she was also a beautiful woman. However, when she came back from a cultivation trip, everyone discovered that her face was ruined. Even after using many spirit pills and miraculous medicines, she still couldn't recover, leaving behind a face full of pockmarks. Thus, she was given the nickname Ma Jyogu. The man waved his folding fan and leisurely said, Guan Jiufeng, you can't blame me for what happened back then. Back then, you didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You actually dared to barge into this place and started a massacre in the demon domain. If this king doesn't teach you a lesson, you will really think that there is no one in the demon domain that can stop you. You should know that this king is already giving you a lot of face by not taking your life back then. Don't be so ungrateful again. Ma Jyogu was old, but which woman didn't cherish their appearance? Not to mention, she was a beautiful woman back then, and having her face ruined was worse than killing her. Recalling the past and seeing her enemy again, Ma Jiugu couldn't help but tremble with anger. And, who is this person? Guan Dinghai couldn't help but ask after seeing that Ma Jiugu dared to call herself this king. Hearing her nephew's question, Ma Jiugu calmed down and revealed a mocking expression. She sneered and said, Dinghai, don't be fooled by this person's human appearance. He is actually a fox spirit. He is clearly a demon, but he still imitates humans and pretends to be refined. This demon is the local demon monarch, Aoli, demon monarch Aoli. Everyone was startled. They didn't expect this scholarly man to be one of the 10 famous demon monarchs in the demon domain. They didn't see the ghost king, but they did see a demon monarch. It seemed it would be difficult for them to settle this peacefully today. No matter how well-mannered this woman was, once she truly hated someone, it was inevitable for her to be a bit sarcastic. Aoli's expression immediately changed upon hearing this. Ma Jiugu's words had indeed poked at his sore spot. Although he was a demon, he was extremely envious of the elegant and refined men in the mortal world and imitated their habits in every aspect. Aoli put away his folding fan and sneered, Guan Jiufeng, seeing that you are an acquaintance, I originally wanted to let you all live, but you don't care about our past relationship. Since that's the case, then all of you can stay here for this king. Chang Ao, the 10 of you retreat, shouted Ma Jiugu. With the strength of Dongfang Chang Ao's group, they weren't qualified to participate in this battle. With that said, Ma Jiugu seemed to instantly become younger. The demon slayer's staff in her hand turned into a streak of light that shot towards Aoli's face. Aoli coldly snorted and lightly waved his folding fan, sending the demon slayer's staff flying. As soon as the main character made a move, the people on both sides immediately released their auras. With so many people's auras condensing together, they immediately formed a powerful pressure in the surroundings. The surrounding vegetation and rocks were blown away, and the birds and beasts that couldn't escape in time were turned into a bloody mist. The area within a kilometer was immediately cleared. The distant Dongfang Chang Ao's group was startled. They were truly worthy of being late transcending tribulation experts. Before they even made a move, just their auras were already astonishing. Suddenly, Ma Jiugu, Aoli, and the others coughed up a mouthful of blood. Dongfang Chang Ao's group also coughed up a mouthful of blood before directly collapsing to the ground. A sonorous and unparalleled divine sense fiercely crashed into everyone's mind. No one could withstand this blow, and they were all injured in an instant. Who? Ma Jiugu shouted with her mouth full of blood. She staggered back with Guan Dinghai and the others. Their faces were filled with bewilderment. This was too terrifying. Even with their cultivation, they could not block the attack of a divine sense. Aoli and the others also staggered back. Their arrogance from a moment ago disappeared without a trace, replaced with fear and unease. Chapter 124. An ancient voice that was calm and indifferent to everything resounded in the minds of the people of the supporting immortal island. The demon domain isn't a place you should come to. I won't allow a group of people with your cultivation to break the balance here. I'll give you an hour to retreat. Don't go deeper into the demon domain, or you'll be killed without mercy. Who are you? Why don't you show yourself? Ma Jiugu snapped, but she couldn't hide the fear on her face. This person was too strong, so strong that he could seriously injure a group of late-stage tribulation transcendence cultivators with just a thought. Unfortunately, that person didn't respond to her. Then, she saw Aoli nodding. Clearly, that expert was also talking to him. After a while, Aoli said to his 4 subordinates in a flustered tone, "Let's go back." After saying that, he took the lead and flew away, followed by the 4 people. As for the palanquin made of green vines, it had long been blown apart by the shockwave. Everyone from supporting Immortal Island was silent when they saw the arrogant Aoli retreat. Guan Dinghai suddenly thought of an impossible possibility and exclaimed, "Could it be the soul formation stage?" Everyone was shocked. That's right, who else could have such strength besides the legendary soul formation stage? But it was unbelievable. If they hadn't experienced it themselves, they wouldn't have believed that a soul formation stage cultivator existed. Ma Jiugu said in a deep voice, "He gave us half an hour. Let's return to the peak first." The 5 elders flashed to Dongfang Chang Ao's side. Each of them picked up 2 people and quickly flew to the peak. The elders on the mountain were shocked when they saw the people flying over. Regardless of whether they were righteous or evil, they were so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths after seeing the situation clearly. Supporting Immortal Island's Dongfang Chang Ao and the other elders were unconscious, while the 5 consecrators' faces were pale, and there were traces of blood at the corner of their mouths. The elder who stayed on the mountain was called Lu Qing. When he saw this scene, he couldn't help but ask, "Jiugu, what happened?" "Lu Qing, there's no need to say anything. Help them heal first." Ma Jiugu pointed at Dongfang Chang Ao and the other elders on the ground. She and the other 4 elders sat down cross-legged. The elders of the other sects looked at each other with bewilderment on their faces. What exactly did they encounter at the foot of the mountain? Even the 5 consecrators at the final stage of the crossing tribulation stage were injured. It was simply unbelievable. They all cast their gazes towards the foot of the mountain, but unfortunately, they could not see anything. After a long time, the 5 consecrators stood up one after another. After a while, the 10 elders also slowly woke up. Dongfang Chang Ao opened his eyes and shouted, "Amazing, I didn't expect such a person to be hiding in the demon region." Ma Jiugu immediately shouted, "Chang Ao, don't talk nonsense." The former looked around and realized that he had returned to the top of the mountain. The people from the various sects were all here. He quickly shut his mouth and got up, standing to the side. The elders of the other sects exchanged glances and were shocked. Although the supporting Immortal Island wanted to hide something, they could tell from Dongfang Changao's words that the people of the supporting Immortal Island met a person at the foot of the mountain. Moreover, it was a person who could injure 5 consecrators and 10 elders of the supporting Immortal Island by himself. If Dongfang Chang Ao wasn't talking nonsense, then this person was a little too terrifying. The demon region was indeed not a good place. "Chang Ao, can you see if the 6 disciples are still alive?" Guan Dinghai asked. Dongfang Chang Ao nodded and took out the compass. He made a hand seal and placed it in front of everyone. The 6 divine sense lights on the compass were still bright. Looking at the distance between them, it was obvious that they were gathered together. Guan Dinghai asked again, "Do you know who these 6 people are?" For the sake of these 6 people, the group of old fellows was covered in dirt. If they didn't know who they were, it would be hard for them to convince themselves. Elder Quan and Elder Sun looked at each other. Guan Dinghai was their master. Elder Quan took a step forward and said, "Master, I know who these 6 people are. They are Gu Qingyun of the Cultivation Pavilion, Xiao Wanqing of the Enron Pavilion, Ko Xiuhua, Murong Xian, Mei Yin Hong of the Myriad Fragrance Garden, and the last one is." "Why are you stuttering? There are only 5 of them. Who is the last one?" Guan Dinghai turned around and reprimanded his disciple. Elder Quan was hesitating whether he should remind his master that it was his son's disciple or not. Seeing that his master was unhappy, he simply said, "The last one is the only direct disciple of Senior Marshal Brother Guan of the Alchemy Pavilion. His name is Yu Qianchou." "Ah. Mighty Marshal's direct disciple? When did he accept a disciple?" Guan Dinghai was stunned. He knew his son too well. How could his son be a master? He was simply misleading his disciples. "Is it Yu Qianchou?" Ma Jiugu suddenly sighed and said, "I met this disciple in the mulberry garden. Even I didn't expect mighty Marshall to accept such an outstanding disciple. Sigh. Fortune favors fools. Guan Dinghai was even more shocked. Just how outstanding was his son's disciple? Even his aunt, who usually didn't praise others, was full of praise for him. He really wanted to see for himself. There were less than 800 disciples left on the mountain peak. Originally, there were only 1 or 2 people whispering to each other when they heard Yu Qianqiu's name. However, it didn't take long for all the disciples of the various sects to be talking about him. It was as if they all knew him, and their words were filled with admiration and praise. This scene was a bit unbelievable to the elders. 10,000 demons as Qiu Wuyuan had met Yu Qianqiu once before. First, he heard Ma Jiugu's praise, and now he heard the other disciples' praise. He had never seen such a situation. When had he ever seen disciples from both the righteous and demonic paths praise the same person at the same time? Qiu Wuyuan had a bad temper, but usually, people with bad tempers were more impatient. For a moment, he was itching to be praised by everyone. He couldn't help but shout, "Who can tell me what is going on with this Yu Qianqiu?" The first to respond to him were naturally his disciples from 10,000 demons. After several disciples came to him and saluted him, they began to talk about the legendary story of Yu Qianqiu. Perhaps some people thought that their stories were not appropriate, or they thought that they had missed the content or something else. First, more and more disciples from 10,000 demons surrounded him, and then disciples from other sects joined in. Everyone started with how Yu Qianqiu faced Ghost General's army, how he led his people to break into Ghost General's camp, how he did not budge when Ghost General's generals reprimanded him, and how he did not kneel. Instead, he talked and laughed in front of Ghost General and his subordinates. There was also the story of how Ghost General was subdued by Yu Qianqiu's song. The soldiers under him shouted in unison, "Mr. Yu is a great talent." The story of Ghost General treating Yu Qianqiu to a drink. The story of Yu Qianqiu rescuing everyone. The disciples of various sects told the story of Yu Qianqiu and Ghost General in an earth-shattering manner. Especially the part where Yu Qianqiu's song stabilized the universe, it was even more shocking. All in all, the details of what happened were very detailed, and everyone felt like they were there again. Some disciples couldn't even find a topic to talk about, and the things that should be said had already been said by others. Therefore, they did some embellishments, making it more dangerous when it was dangerous, and when it was passionate, it stirred people's hearts even more. They forcibly magnified the story. Some female disciples from Moon Clan who were rather talented in music couldn't help but sing the song "Love Country, Love Beauties" together. The elders of various sects and the 6 worshippers of Fuxian Island were dumbfounded. All of them wanted to drag Yu Qianqiu here to see what kind of person he was. Qiu Wuyuan stroked his beard and sighed. He is really a hero. It was this old man's mistake. I was wrong. Elder Quan and Elder Sun exchanged a look. Why didn't we know that Yu Qianqiu, who was drooling and sleeping on the spacecraft, was such a person? Guan Dinghai's face twitched, and he said woodenly, "Is this a mighty disciple? Our Fuxian Island actually hid such a person? This is really unbelievable." Ma Jiugu remembered that day at the seaside. It was because Yu Qianqiu's song moved Yan Zixia, and she had the idea of matchmaking the two of them. She couldn't help but sigh. I believe what they said. I've heard Yu Qianqiu's zither and song skills with my own ears. It's not an exaggeration to say that he is the best in this field. It's really amazing. Moreover, these disciples didn't know him before. Is there a need to flatter him? Chapter 125. At this time, Yu Qianqiu naturally did not know that the disciples of the 6 major sects were praising him as brightly as a big red flower. He also did not know that the 6 major sects had decided to end the trial ahead of time. He was still wondering if he could fish for more things in the demon region and slowly spend the month before returning. The 3 saints of Lingwu respectfully led the 6 of them to the top of the mountain. They answered all of Yu Qianqiu's questions, and Yu Qianqiu finally learned a little about the 3 freaks. The 3 freaks were all demons who had cultivated for more than 2,000 years and had reached the early stage of the tribulation passing stage. The flirtatious woman in revealing clothes was a colorful snake spirit called Hong Sanyang. The yellow-haired old freak was a lion spirit called Huang Erwei from his hairstyle. The original form of that dignified old monster was actually a mountain elf named Ho De Quan. When they reached the top of the mountain, they were shocked. What a thick spiritual energy! The spiritual energy at the top of the mountain was actually so thick that it could form fog and rain. Yu Qianqiu could feel the spiritual energy floating on his skin, mixed with the unique fragrance in the air. He felt as if he was immersed in a rain of perfume. The 3 of you sure know how to enjoy yourselves. To think that you would be able to occupy such a good place. I believe it will be of great help to your cultivation, no? Yu Qianqiu said to the 3 freaks with an ambiguous smile. The 3 freaks' hearts skipped a beat. Did he think that the 3 of them were not qualified to enjoy this place? It seemed that they would have to give away this precious place. Hong Sanyang stepped forward and said, "If you are satisfied with this place, the 3 of us are willing to give it to you." Oh! Yu Qianqiu glanced at the 2 lumps of white flesh on her chest that even her clothes could not cover. He said indifferently, "Do I look like someone who takes away someone's love?" Hong Sanyang twisted her waist and waved her hands. "That's not what I meant. We are willing to give this place to you." "Is that so?" Yu Qianqiu's gaze fell on Ho De Quan and Huang Erwei. He asked, "Do the 2 of you mean the same?" The 2 monsters looked at each other. Ho De Quan said respectfully, "The 2 of us are not good with words. Sanyang's meaning is our meaning." Yu Qianqiu thought to himself that it was a pity that he couldn't move this place away. He couldn't stay here for long either. Otherwise, if he cultivated here every day, he believed that he would be able to break through to the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm very quickly. Thinking about it, he still felt sorry for them. He waved his hand and said, "I appreciate your kindness, but there is no need." The 3 freaks exchanged glances and thought to themselves, Bai Changchun's disciple is really someone who is used to seeing good things. He even looks down on such a good place. Ah! Oh, right. Yu Qianqiu asked curiously, "Why is there such dense spiritual energy here? Do you know why?" Hong Sanyang smiled a little reservedly and said, "The 3 of us chose to settle down here because we saw that the surrounding trees were tall and dense. Even after staying here for over 1,000 years, we have never seen anything out of the ordinary. Speaking of which, it was strange. Half a year ago, a fragrance suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Following that, the spiritual qi became more and more abundant, resulting in the current situation. Otherwise, with our cultivation levels back then, we wouldn't have been able to occupy a place like this." Yu Qianqiu nodded. After thinking about it, it made sense. Which monster wouldn't like a place with such dense spiritual energy? With their cultivation levels from 1,000 years ago, they definitely wouldn't have been able to keep it. Even now, it was probably because this phenomenon had only appeared for a short period of time. Otherwise, with their cultivation levels at the early stage of the tribulation passing stage, they wouldn't have been able to keep it either. They looked around at the surroundings. This mountain was quite strange. The foot of the mountain was lush and verdant, but there wasn't a single tree at the top. It was all a stone forest with jagged rocks of all shapes and sizes. The strange fragrance seemed to be coming from the stone forest. Yu Qianqiu's eyes shone as he stared at the stone forest and asked, "Could it be that there is some kind of treasure beneath this stone forest?" "Mister, please follow me." Hong Sanyang led the way, and everyone followed her into the stone forest. When they arrived in front of a stone cave, the fragrance became even more intense, as if it was coming from this cave. Hong Sanyang pointed at the stone cave and said, "Mister, your thoughts are the same as ours. We also suspected that there is some kind of treasure beneath this mountain, so we wanted to dig a hole to see what is at the bottom. However, the hardness of the stones here is beyond our expectations. The surface is still fine, but the deeper we go, the harder it is to dig. The three of us spent almost half a year to dig 100 meters deep. Now, it's almost impossible to move an inch forward. I'm afraid that without an artifact that can split rocks, we won't be able to go any further." "Oh, there's such a thing?" Yu Qianqiu asked curiously. "Come, let's go in and take a look." As he spoke, he took the lead and walked in. The cave wasn't big, and it could barely accommodate two people walking side by side. It was probably because of the difficulty of digging. After walking for more than 10 meters, they felt their vision darken. Suddenly, they saw specks of fluorescent light. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Were they fluorites? Could it be that there was a spirit stone mine below? When he was a miner in Ongquangsung, he found out that fluorites were associated with spirit stones. He quickly walked down. Because this cave was dug from the top of the mountain, the slope was quite steep. Every 10 meters, the direction of the cave would turn in the opposite direction. After walking for about 100 meters, they realized that there was no more path. They had reached the end of the cave. Hong Sanyang explained from behind, "The three of us have only dug up to this point." Yu Qianqiu nodded. He made a hand seal, and the three cold lights on his body quickly shot towards the stone wall. A series of ding-ding-dang-dang sounds were heard. When the flying swords returned, they discovered that the series of attacks only left a bunch of white spots on the stone wall. They couldn't even make a few small holes. Hiss! Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air. He reached out to touch the stone wall and said, "What a hard stone." Hong Sanyang's eyes flashed with a trace of a smile. She thought, there must be some kind of treasure under the mountain. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a strange phenomenon. "I brought you here because I knew you couldn't dig it out. In the future, the three of us will dig it out, and the thing below will still be ours." Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and looked at the stone wall for a while. Suddenly, he said, "All of you go out first. Without my permission, no one can come in. Hong Sanyang, the three of you take good care of my friends. If they lose even a single hair, you can think of the consequences yourself." His last sentence was very cold against the blue fluorescent light in the cave. The three saints of Lingwu quivered and bowed to accept the order. On the other hand, Ko Shuahua and the others were secretly muttering, "We are disciples of the same sect, when did we become your friends?" However, they were in a dangerous situation, and they weren't stupid. Yu Qianqiu's words must have a deeper meaning, so they could only make up their minds to cooperate. Yu Qianqiu waited until there was no more movement behind him. After confirming that everyone had left, a pair of gloves appeared in his hands. It was the mountain-piercing claw that had once helped him steal spirit stones. After putting on the gloves, Yu Qianqiu stroked his shiny black claws and muttered with a smile, "A magical treasure that can split mountains and split rocks? I happen to have one here. I want to see what's down there. It's actually protected by such hard stones. Don't let me down." Swoosh, swoosh. Claw shadows danced in the air, and the iron-like stone walls began to crumble. Accompanied by an uncontrollable smile on Yu Qianqiu's face, he went deeper into the cave. After half a day, Yu Qianqiu didn't know how deep he had dug, but it was enough to reach the bottom of the mountain. This was because the mountain wasn't high to begin with, it was estimated to be only 200 to 300 meters high. Apart from the nearly 100 meters that the three monsters had dug, he estimated that he had also dug 200 to 300 meters. Thinking of this, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but curse, F***ck. 3 idiots, don't you know to dig from the bottom of the mountain? Why did you have to dig from the top? You made me work for so long for nothing. After cursing, he swung his claws again. Suddenly, he felt relaxed as a purple light squirmed in the hole in the stone wall. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. He clawed a few times and dug a hole that he could crawl through. First, he stuck his head in to take a look. What he saw stunned Yu Qianqiu, and he almost drooled. Chapter 126. Someone in the cultivation world once divided spirit stones into 5 grades: inferior grade, intermediate grade, superior grade, supreme grade, and divine grade. Yu Qianqiu had seen and used the first 3 grades, and there were many in Utopia. As for supreme grade, he had only heard that it was a purple grade spirit stone. Unlike the first 3 grades, the exchange rate between a higher grade and a lower grade was 100. It was said that 1 supreme grade spirit stone could be exchanged for 10,000 superior grade spirit stones. He had never seen it before. It was only when he saw Ghost General's purple wine cup that he realized the existence of supreme grade spirit stones in this world. Some people said that inferior grade spirit stones were mostly used by commoners in the cultivation world, while intermediate grade spirit stones were mostly used by the rich and powerful. According to the first 2 metaphors, the amber gold superior grade spirit stone symbolized the royalty among spirit stones, while the purple supreme grade spirit stone symbolized the emperor among spirit stones. As for the higher grade divine grade spirit stones, no one seemed to have seen them before. Some people said they were red, some said they were black, and some said they were 7-colored. In short, there was no conclusion. Paw! Yu Qianqiu had just crawled out of the cave when he fell flat on his face due to being distracted. He shook his head, and his eyes shone with purple light as he crawled up nonchalantly. He swallowed his saliva and mumbled, "Cake seller. I'm not dreaming, am I?" What did he see? In front of him was an amethyst palace. It was a medium-sized cave filled with amethysts that shone with purple light. This was a world of amethysts. No, not exactly. In the center of the amethyst palace, several crystal bamboo shoots formed by amethysts surrounded a black crystal. The black crystal was about 3 meters in diameter, and it was covered with black crystal teeth like a hedgehog protecting itself. It emitted a faint black glow, suppressing the purple light in the hole. It was filled with an unquestionable dominance. Yu Qianqiu felt like he was in a fantasy world. He broke off a piece of amethyst from the side in disbelief. The crystal lay in his palm. Its shape and size were no different from ordinary spirit stones, except for the difference in color. He then leaned on the amethyst wall to observe. As expected, there were very regular cracks. Breaking off a piece would naturally be the same size and shape as a spirit stone. This might be the special characteristic of spirit stones. He held a purple crystal in each of his hands and activated his cultivation technique. Boundless spiritual energy gushed out from the 2 little guys. Holy shit! It really is a supreme grade spirit stone. Yu Qianqiu casually tossed the purple crystal aside with his 2 hands. The purple crystal let out a crisp ding-dang-dang sound. Waha! I'm rich! Waha! I'm rich! Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised his head and laughed maniacally. He laughed so hard that tears were about to come out of his eyes. With a flash, he directly rushed into the amethyst palace, rolling and crawling all over the place. When he saw an amethyst bamboo shoot, he hugged and kissed it madly. He was even crazier than when he saw the most beautiful woman in the world with the most voluptuous body. In the end, extreme joy turned to sorrow. He accidentally bumped into the crystal tooth of the black crystal in the center. F***ck. The sharp pain on his forehead woke him up from his madness. He rubbed his forehead with his hand and climbed up. He felt something sticky on his palm. When he let go of his hand, he saw a patch of red. Did he actually break his forehead? Damn it! What kind of thing is so sharp? Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry. It should be known that although his current cultivation was not high, it was already very difficult for ordinary blades and spears from the secular world to harm his skin. Moreover, he had only accidentally bumped into the wall just now. How could his head be cut open? He couldn't help but take a few steps back, looking at the 3 zhang tall black crystal from top to bottom. The fully armed black crystal tooth shone brightly under the purple light, showing its inviolable sovereignty. Black crystal. There are spirit stones of this color. Holy shit, could it be? The muscles on Yu Qianqiu's face twitched as he thought of a spirit stone that only existed in legends. He hurriedly took a few steps forward. His head, which had just stopped bleeding, once again touched the black crystal tooth. He opened his mouth wide to examine it. Sure enough, he found a pattern of cracks similar to those on the amethyst wall. Yu Qianqiu's trembling hands touched it. As he carefully caressed it, his mouth kept mumbling, "How is this possible? How is this possible? Could it really be the legendary divine grade spirit stone? I don't believe it, I really don't believe it, please don't play such a big joke on me. In fact, these top-grade spirit stones are enough for me, really enough. Please don't joke with me, my heart is too fragile. I really can't take fright, I'm really very timid." Paw! A small piece of the black crystal tooth was ruthlessly torn off by him. It was cold to the touch. Yu Qianqiu stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. His palm gripped the small piece of thing tightly, circulating his cultivation technique. Suddenly, a surge of spiritual energy surged into his meridians like a raging sea. Ah! Yu Qianqiu let out a miserable scream. His palm loosened, and the small piece of black crystal fell onto the amethyst floor. Yu Qianqiu's teeth chattered from the pain. He couldn't even lift his arm. He didn't expect that such a small piece of black crystal could contain so much spiritual energy. With a little more absorption, it was like an ocean pouring into a river. Even the ladders on both sides of the river were about to be washed away. Just like that, the meridians in his arm were already injured. Oh my God! Absorbing spiritual energy actually damaged my meridians, this is simply unheard of. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and muttered. But right now, he was in pain and happy at the same time. Without a doubt, the black crystal in front of him was really the legendary divine grade spirit stone. But wasn't this the legendary spirit stone used by immortals? How could it be found in this demon domain? Fortunately, his arm was still hurting, otherwise he would have gone crazy from happiness. Taking out a healing pill, he put it into his mouth and sat cross-legged to repair his damaged meridians. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he exhaled and opened his eyes. He casually picked up the small piece of black crystal on the ground and stood up. After this torment, he finally calmed down. At this time, he thought of another matter. The spiritual energy and fragrance outside were most likely related to this amethyst palace. Moreover, the fragrance inside was clearly much richer than outside. Where did this fragrance come from? Could it be that the spiritual energy was too rich that it emitted a fragrance? Yu Qianqiu looked around the amethyst palace, not even sparing the top of his head. However, he did not find anything special. Thus, he put his hands behind his back and sniffed around. After a few rounds, he found that the place with the strongest fragrance was where the black crystal was. But when he stuck his nose to it, he could not smell anything. What was going on? Taking a few steps back, his nose twitched. Feeling the flow of the fragrance in the air, Yu Qianqiu's gaze fell on the top of the black crystal. The fragrance in the air seemed to be coming from there. What else could there be up there? Yu Qianqiu walked over and lightly climbed up the black crystal tooth. It didn't take long for his head to reach the top. As far as the eye could see, there were no crystal teeth on it. Instead, there was a small black nest, and in the nest, there was a ball of fluffy white fur. It was faintly covered in a layer of rainbow light, and there were small white flowers that were almost invisible to the naked eye at the top of the hair. Along with his slight breathing, the white and tender ball of hair, which was about the length of a finger, began to sway gently. An indescribable fragrance spread faintly. Yu Qianqiu twisted his head and muttered to himself, "What is this? It seems that it can be blown away by a heavy breath. The fragrance emitted by this little thing can actually penetrate such a thick rock and run out to seduce people. It's really strange." Something suddenly flashed in Yu Qianqiu's mind. His eyes suddenly opened wide, and his mouth opened so wide that a fist could be stuffed inside. His hands and feet loosened, and he directly fell to the ground. He was not aware of the pain of falling at all. He lay on the ground with his legs spread out, motionless. His eyes and mouth were still so wide open. After a while, his mouth opened and closed, and he murmured, "My name is Yutan. I miss you day and night. My name is Yutan. I miss you and don't see you. My hair is like snow for 10,000 years. My name is Yutan. I miss you and don't see you. My beauty is withered, and it won't be long. My name is Yutan. I'm afraid that I won't see you. This longing will appear once in 1,000 years. My name is Yutan. I will never die. If you come to see me, don't miss me. 1,000 years, every strand is missed." Chapter 127. The elixir recipe Jade Disc recorded 10 top-notch spirit herbs with the most miraculous effects. These 10 spirit herbs were listed as spirit herbs that shouldn't appear in the mortal world. For such a good thing, Yu Qianqiu naturally read it very attentively. Among them, there was a spirit herb called Audumbra flower. The record and description of it in the jade disc was exactly the same as the white velvet flower that he had just seen. There was a story recorded in the jade disc. It was said that there used to be a beautiful god named Audumbra flower. She was the daughter of a god king, but she and an ordinary god fell in love. Her father didn't allow it and wanted to separate them. In the end, the two agreed to elope and meet again somewhere in the mortal world. They said that they would not leave until they meet. In the end, Audumbra waited in the mortal world for 10,000 years, but her lover didn't come. Because she privately went to the mortal world, she was injured in the process and couldn't live forever. 10,000 years later, Audumbra was already old and beautiful. Before she died, she turned into a strange flower, which was the Audumbra flower. She left a message on the stone wall for her lover, which was what Yu Qianqiu had been muttering. Yu Qianqiu didn't believe this legend, but it also proved that this flower was extraordinary. The jade disc recorded that the Audumbra flower was in the shape of white velvet. Every 1,000 years, it would only grow a single strand and bloom into a small white flower. As long as there was no external force to destroy it, as long as a single strand grew, it would never wither. Mortals could stay young forever after consuming a little flower. Its healing effect was unparalleled in the world, and it could heal the dead. Of course, this was just a metaphor. How could the dead be revived? However, as long as there was still a breath left, it could indeed be saved. "I'm really lucky," Yu Qianqiu murmured. He stood up in a daze and looked around the amethyst palace. After a while, he suddenly hugged an amethyst bamboo next to him and burst into tears. He had never cried like this since he came to this world. Yu Qianqiu's face was covered in tears. He had never cried like this before. "Why is my life so bitter? If only I could send the entire Amethyst Palace to Utopia. How beautiful and good the Amethyst Palace would be. Do I really have to break it up and send it over? This is something that can't be seen even once in 1,000 years. Boo-hoo. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu was crying because his cultivation level was not high enough and he did not have the strength to send such a huge palace into Utopia in one go. The thought of having to dismantle this treasure made in heaven really made his heart ache. But no matter how much his heart ached, he still had to break them up and send them away. Since he had already dug a hole in the ground, wouldn't it become someone else's property if it stayed here? Yu Qianqiu waved his sleeves to wipe away the tears on his face. His divine sense immediately contacted by Suzhen of Utopia and said, "Big sister, I'll have to trouble you with something. Quickly go to a hidden place at the bottom of the valley and set up a formation. You have to use your special skills and set up a formation that will make it difficult for others to barge in. I want to send some good treasures over, but it's really inconvenient for others to see it now." In Utopia, Bai Suzhen nodded. She was obedient to her brother's words. When she thought about how she could see something that others couldn't see, she couldn't help but feel a sweetness in her heart. She immediately used teleportation, which consumed a lot of primordial energy, to avoid everyone and instantly arrived at the peak of the mountain where Yu Qianqiu had carved the words, Utopia. Her figure flashed into the valley. After finding a relatively hidden place, Bai Suzhen set up a formation according to Yu Qianqiu's instructions. Yu Qianqiu sent another message. "Sister, after the items are sent over, immediately activate the formation." Bai Suzhen nodded and thought to herself, "I want to see what you can get. Why are you acting so mysterious?" Before she could react, large pieces of purple crystals appeared out of thin air and began to pile up on the ground. Could this be a supreme-grade spirit stone? Bai Suzhen raised her hand to cover her lips as she looked at the sparkling purple crystals falling in front of her eyes. Her eyes widened. She, who was usually calm and collected, was clearly shocked by this scene. Whether it was a human or a demon, in the cultivation world, it was a huge fortune. Half a day later, the purple crystals were still falling. Bai Suzhen's expression turned serious. She released her divine sense and carefully checked the surroundings. It was indeed inconvenient for someone who wasn't extremely trustworthy to see such a large amount of purple crystals. She had to help her brother keep a lookout. Another half a day later, the purple crystals no longer appeared. However, Yu Qianqiu asked with a grin, "Sister, have you seen a divine-grade spirit stone before?" Bai Suzhen was stunned. After pondering for a while, she shook her head. "I've heard of it, but I've never seen it before." Hee hee. Yu Qianqiu laughed again. "Then, have you heard of the Audumbra flower?" "Ah!" Bai Suzhen exclaimed, "Is it the legendary Audumbra flower that can preserve one's youth?" She then asked, "Brother, do you have it?" "Kaka." In another space, Yu Qianqiu laughed madly. Sister Ren was usually a calm woman, but no woman could resist the temptation of something that could preserve one's youth. Hee hee. Sister is really knowledgeable. You've even heard of this thing. Sister, I didn't come to Demon Domain in vain. Watch carefully, I'll let you see the divine-grade spirit stone with the Audumbra flower on your head. Yu Qianqiu said proudly. As soon as he finished speaking, a black crystal with a circumference of 1 zhang appeared on the pile of purple crystals. It was covered in crystal teeth. This is a divine-grade spirit stone. Such a big piece. Bai Suzhen floated over and caressed it with her slender hands. Suddenly, a unique fragrance spread from it. She sniffed and heard Yu Qianqiu say with a smile, "Sister, look at what's growing on it." Bai Suzhen immediately thought of the Audumbra flower. Her body was as graceful as a fairy as she floated into the air. The moment she saw the ball of white velvet on top of the black lump, she cried out in surprise, "Is this really the Adumber flower? I've never seen it before." "Brother, are you sure?" Yu Qianqiu said proudly, "Sister, look at what you're saying. Do you think I'd lie to you?" Bai Suzhen nodded her head with a radiant smile on her face. Floating in the air, she bent down and reached out her hand to touch the ball of white velvet. In the end, she did not touch it. She felt that it was too delicate and her heart would be broken if she touched it. Hee, this thing is a great treasure. When I go back, I'll pick a few spiritual herbs to stimulate its medicinal effects. I'll refine a furnace of elixirs for sister to maintain youth. Sister will never grow old, forever the prettiest woman in the world, haha. Bai Suzhen nodded in high spirits. Her pretty face was flushed red, looking even more alluring. Then she heard Yu Qianqiu say, "Sister, activate the treasure protecting formation first. I still have some matters to attend to here. We'll talk about the rest when I get back." He then fell silent. Bai Suzhen calmed herself down and did as she was told. Yu Qianqiu wandered around the empty amethyst palace. After making sure there were no purple crystals left, he looked at the stone walls around him and sighed heavily. The stone walls were covered in amber gold. They were high-grade spirit stones. This was obviously a spirit stone mine, and it was the highest-grade spirit stone mine. If it was any other time, he would definitely dig them up fiercely. But he had just made a fortune. These high-grade spirit stones were insignificant to him. Sigh. Let's make a fortune together. Yu Qianqiu sighed. His figure flashed into the hole he dug and quickly returned to the top of the mountain. As soon as he walked out of the hole, Ko Shuahua and the others, as well as the 3 saints of Lingwu, came to greet him. Yu Qianqiu shook his head at the crowd and said, "It's already opened up." Sigh. How boring. I thought it was some treasure, but it turns out to be a spirit stone mine. I've been busy for so long in vain. All of you, go down and take a look. Chapter 128. Xiao Wanqing and the other 2 girls had never seen a spirit stone mine before, so they immediately hopped into the cave. The 3 sages of Lingwu looked at each other in confusion. It had only been 2 days. The 3 demons estimated that the place where they had dug was not far from where they had dug. Otherwise, how could they have dug it so quickly? Ko Shuahua and Gu Qingyun also followed the 3 demons in. As they ventured deeper into the cave, the 3 demons became more and more alarmed. They walked all the way to the spirit stone cave at the bottom. Calculating the distance between them and the cave, it was more than 300 meters deep. The 3 of them had spent nearly half a year to dig 100 meters, but Yu Qianqiu had dug more than 300 meters in less than 2 days. How could they not be shocked? Therefore, the 3 demons were even more in awe of Bai Changchun's disciple. Wow! Xiao Wanqing and the other 2 girls kept exclaiming, "So many high-grade spirit stones, all of them are high-grade spirit stones." 3 pairs of white and tender little hands kept stroking the stone wall, their eyes were full of little stars. Ko Shuahua and Gu Qingyun were also amazed. Admittedly, they had never seen a spirit stone mine before. Secondly, they had never seen so many superior-grade spirit stones exposed on the stone wall. The amber gold shone brightly, clearly tempting people to come and pick them. Then, Yu Qianqiu, who slowly walked into the cave, laughed and said, "I'll give you 20 days. How much you can dig will be yours." I think the 3 sages of Lingwu are not such stingy people. When he said the last sentence, he looked at the 3 demons. They were indeed a little unwilling to give away so many superior-grade spirit stones for nothing. Ho Dequan and Huang Erwei smiled awkwardly. They could not afford to offend Yu Qianqiu. On the other hand, Hong Sanyang smiled brightly at everyone and said, "Everyone, go ahead and dig as much as you can. I guarantee that you will all be able to take them away. Thank you, Sister Hong, everyone said in unison. After thanking her, they started their own excavation. Even Ko Xiuhua and Gu Qingyun pulled out their swords and pried the spirit stones from the stone wall. Xiao Wanqing and the other two girls, in particular, seemed to have a grudge against the stone wall. They held their swords and stabbed wildly. Unfortunately, the stone wall was too hard. No matter how he tried, he couldn't pry a piece off. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, was stunned. He looked at Hong Sanyang, and couldn't help but admire her social skills. In just a day or two, she had already become the big sister of these guys. However, he was quite generous. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely not be willing to give so many spirit stones to others. For example, the two demons, Ho and Huang, had uneasy expressions on their faces. Looking at the meaningful smile on Hong Sanyang's face, then looking at the miserable digging speed of the people from supporting Immortal Island, Yu Qianqiu suddenly came to a realization. It turned out that this woman already knew that they wouldn't be able to dig anything, so she did them a favor at little cost. What a good scheme. You guys go dig as well. Yu Qianqiu walked to the front of the three demons and said with a smile. The two demons, Ho and Huang, chuckled. Originally, they were still a little worried about Yu Qianqiu. Now that they had obtained his permission, there was no reason for them to be polite. They immediately took out their weapons and got busy. For a moment, the cave was filled with clanking sounds. Why aren't you going? Yu Qianqiu glanced at Hong Sanyang out of the corner of his eye. Hong Sanyang was still annoyed at the two demons for being so useless. Such a huge spirit stone mine was in her own home, so why were they in such a hurry? What did they want to snatch from others? As long as Yu Qianqiu didn't make a move, how much could they dig even if they dug for a year, let alone 20 days? It wasn't easy for this old woman to do them a favor at little cost, but now you guys have messed things up and made me look down on you for no reason. Could it be that building a good relationship with Bai Changchun's disciple isn't more important than these spirit stones? What a pig brain. Hearing Yu Qianqiu's question, Hong Sanyang's expression instantly changed. She smiled and said, "It won't be too late to dig in the future. I will accompany Mr. That's right, Mister, why aren't you digging for some spirit stones? Me digging for it?" Yu Qianqiu snorted in disdain. I've already taken a big one, why would I need to work hard for a small one in front of you? Face was something that could only be used at crucial times. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered to say anything more. His left hand took out a piping hot roasted pheasant. He had instructed Qin Feng in Utopia to roast it. His right hand held a wine cup and a wine pot, and he leisurely found a place to sit down. He poured himself a cup of wine and took a bite of the meat. He shook his head as he watched the crowd dig for spirit stones. The sight of the girl's buttock swaying back and forth was indeed a sight to behold. Hong Sanyang was shocked. With her cultivation, she could naturally tell that the roasted pheasant had just been roasted. It would make sense if Yu Qianqiu didn't care about high-grade spirit stones. After all, his sect was extraordinary, so he definitely wouldn't care about these things. But where did this freshly roasted pheasant come from? How could he roast a chicken in his storage bag? That was simply impossible. As expected, the disciple of an expert had superior methods. Seeing him staring at the girl's buttocks, Hong Sanyang looked down at her half-naked chest and smiled. She walked over to Yu Qianqiu and sat down beside him. She picked up the wine pot from the ground and smiled. "Let me pour some wine for you, sir." Feeling the pressure on his arm, Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and looked at the two lumps of white meat that had been squeezed out of shape. He didn't say anything and just silently drank and ate the meat. In just a short while, he had finished the roasted pheasant. Seeing that there was no reaction, Hong Sanyang felt that it was a pity. If only she could hook up with Bai Changchun's disciple, she wouldn't have to live in fear in the demon region for the rest of her life. While she was in a daze, she suddenly saw an oily hand grabbing towards her full breasts. Just as she was about to be overjoyed, the other party only grabbed and pinched her breasts. He casually rubbed the oil on his hand before retracting his hand. Her white and tender breasts were immediately covered in oil. Hong Sanyang was stunned for a moment before her face turned red. This person was too bad, using my breasts to wipe the oil on his hands. She looked at the people digging for spirit stones like a thief. Seeing that everyone was busy digging for spirit stones and no one had seen her, she stood up and hurried out. Yu Qianqiu smiled and put away the wine utensils in front of him. He tore 2 pieces of cloth from the corner of his robe and stuffed them in his ears. Immediately, the sound of the clanking became much quieter. Using his arms as a pillow, he lay down and started humming an authentic Peking opera tune. I stood on the city gate tower and looked at the mountain scenery. My ears heard the chaos outside the city, flags fluttering in the wind. He gradually fell asleep. He didn't know how long he slept for. Suddenly, he was pushed awake. When he opened his eyes, he saw that it was Xiao Wanqing who had pushed him. Everyone was surrounding him, looking anxious. He quickly got up and asked, "What's wrong? Why are you speaking so softly?" When he came back to his senses, he realized that his ears were blocked. He tore off the cloth and glanced at Hong Sanyang's white breasts, asking, "What's wrong?" Hong Sanyang frowned and said, "I don't know who it is, but they've surrounded the entire mountain." Yu Qianqiu looked at her coldly. "You've lived here for so long and you don't even know who has surrounded you. You're more likely to lie to a ghost. I'd like to see what you're up to." Without another word, he dashed out. The group followed him out. When he reached the top of the mountain and looked down, he saw a circle of people at the foot of the mountain. There were more than 10 people holding torches and galloping up the mountain on horseback. Under the illumination of the torches, their armor was clear. Who else could it be but Ghost General's men? Only Ghost General and his gang would pretend to be soldiers even though they've clearly become ghosts. If even I can see it, how can you not see it, Hong Sanyang? Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment and understood what was going on. Hong Sanyang was probably trying to make use of him. She heard that he was acquainted with Ghost General, so she used him to solve the problem. What if what he said was false? What if, in the future, she also used the fact that he was Bai Changchun's disciple? Who knew what Bai Changchun would do if he found out that someone was pretending to be his disciple? This woman was a little too smart. Humph. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. His killing intent rose, and he turned around abruptly, staring coldly at Hong Sanyang. He hated people who schemed against him the most. When there was no other way, he would tolerate it. But when there was a way, he would not tolerate it for even a moment. Hong Sanyang's thoughts were seen through, and she shifted her steps slightly unnaturally. Even Ho Dequan and Huang Erwei could see what was going on. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.